from 3 to 5 minutes, and that we do reserve the right to cut them off if we get to a point we start getting to repetitive. You know, if we have 4 people all come up and say the same thing, we may have to cut them short. So, and when you do get to the podium, please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Joanne Jordan. I live here in Hayes, and I thought you could use a little good news to start the meeting tonight. Yesterday, they released in the Kansas Music Review a beautiful article about Iceland Walters, who participated in the U.S. Army All-American Bowl, and she is the scholarship winner, which means that nationwide she was selected for a $1,000 scholarship. And it's really a beautiful article. If anybody wants it, I'm sure that just about anybody in the Hayes High Band would be willing to send you the link. And also on Thursday, all of the large ensembles received superior ratings at festival. So there are some amazing things happening in the music department that we want you to know about. And for the board, a lot of this is just sort of highlights of things I shared. I wanted to share this publicly, a few of the items that I had emailed you. USD 489 states on its website that it provides a quality learning experience for every child in every classroom every day. In my opinion, the current financial situation and proposed cuts put this at risk. While some of the financial challenges come from the state level, some are directly related to past choices of financial expenditures by the administration and the school board. As a parent of a senior at Hayes High, I have witnessed my daughter grow and learn about herself and the world through her involvement in music, visual arts, and theater, just as I have seen her grow through her knowledge of science, math, and English. All of her classes have been important in preparing her for college. And I believe that the proposed cuts, especially to music, put this at risk. And part of my reason for picking music is it's easier for me to explain the cuts in that specific area versus touching on why I think the nursing issues are so important, just because I don't have access to that same information. While a 1.8 FTE may not sound like much, it is 20% of the current FTE, and this is in addition to 3 positions that were cut 3 years ago. So in effect, you're asking the remaining teachers to do the same amount of work with 59% less time. And back when we scaled back 3 years ago, we lost the 4th grade string program, so we should expect that there's going to be further cuts if the current recommendations go through. But the board's challenge is to look for ways that will minimally impact educational opportunities for our students in preparing a budget for the coming school year. I challenge you to let it be ones that provide a quality learning experience for every child in every classroom every day. Let it be ones that support excellence that we have come to expect as a district. And I also wish to speak to the public. I challenge you to be actively involved in our schools. We need volunteers. We need mentors. We need people to serve as adjudicators for debate tournaments and other events. Please attend our concerts. Please attend the theater. I'm going to let Brenda speak about the theater awards. Please attend our athletic events. Our children are our future. It's everyone's job to provide a quality learning experience for every child in every classroom every day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
My name is Brenda Mader, and I had the great good fortune to direct with Johnny Matlock last fall's Hayes High School musical. So I, too, have some really, really awesome news for you. The first thing I want to do is twofold. As the parent of 2 wonderful sons who were involved in arts, athletics, and academia, and in both public and private school systems, I thank you. They were part of a time when it was rich and it was awesome. And because it's been rich and really awesome for some time, I can also report that the Hayes High musical from last fall all shook up because of the history of education here in USD 49, received 17 nominations in the Jester Awards through Music Theater of Wichita. excelling experiences, outstanding performances in the high school musical theater world, where 41 musicals from mostly around the Wichita area, the big schools, everyone competed in this over the course of the last 9 months. Out of 23 categories that Hayes High could have possibly received awards in, we received awards, or out of 19, we received awards in 15. And we received 17 total awards. 6 of our actors, musicians, performers, artists were singled out for acting award recognition. That's twice as many as any other high school that competed in the Gesture Awards at Music Theater of Wichita. And again, more awards than anyone else received, knowing what we were competing against, knowing the size of their auditoriums, the scope of their programs, the numbers of students involved. That is amazing. And it's amazing because our kids work so hard at it. And it's also amazing because USD 49 has always prided itself in having art and music teachers available even at the elementary school levels. I found that as an incredible source of pride as the director of the Hayes Arts Council when I would go to state arts meetings. That's why our kids are awesome, because it is proven that a student involved in the arts is 4 times as likely to be recognized for academic achievement. That's why our kids are good. It's a composite. Students who take 4 years of arts and music classes average almost 100 points higher on the SAT scores than students who take only a half a year or less. Those are the statistics. And our students here in Hayes, in USD 49, they demonstrate that. The students who receive these awards have been a product of a system, or even in elementary school. They were able to put their hands on an instrument, sing in that wonderful school choir, and hang their pictures all over the schools. Ones they made in art classes, not just in the general classroom. And because of that, they've excelled. And we, Johnny and I and everybody on the All Shook Up team, was the beneficiary of that because of the product that these students brought with them. My grandson is in the 2nd grade at O'Laughlin. He loves, like his father, athletics, arts, and academics. And I want him to become the same product that I will stand here one day and celebrate as a high school student. And that comes when we celebrate our young people. And so again, I'm actually quite grateful for the legacy that USD 49 has given the group of high school students this year. I just ask that they be given that for the time to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kevin Davidson. I'm a chiropractor here in Hayes, but also a local musician. I know the board has big decisions to make, and you're doing, a good job as far as allowing us to speak and take part in some of those decisions. I think it's tough as a parent. I have an 8th grader and also a sophomore, both in music and sports. I grew up in music and sports too. My first several years of college were books, tuition, and fees paid for. I grew up in a great school as USD 47, just like this, as far as knowing that you're going to get a good education, not just through music, but allowing the educational process through the great instructors, whether it's math, whether it's science. We have a unique program here, and we have a unique area district with the college, the musicians, the instructors, and they all flow together in this whole community. That's why we decided to locate here, my wife and I, to raise our children. And, I know you're going to work with us, and I know there's other instructors here with their lives, they're in jeopardy right now. You're making changes to affect all their lives, more than what any of us would ever recognize not being an instructor. But as a musician, I've performed with the junior high, the elementary, the high school, Mr. Monteifel, Mrs. Cruel, Mr. Matlock. The education that they're providing our children is just unbelievable. It's just, and I say that, it's just unbelievable. And you don't want to change that. I know I'm excited about, getting my point across tonight without, sounding a little critical or judgmental. But I ask you, please work with us. If there's any decision made, please work with us on how to remedy, not to cut, at least those programs. The other instructors here, I don't know enough about the backgrounds or why you're cutting different areas. But as far as, and when I say instructors, as far as the curriculum, But I do feel that there's a way. Other cities have had bond issues. Other cities have taken on outside funding, pay to play. I mean, I'd be more than happy to pay a little money for my kids to even perform. All right? I think everybody would share that same philosophy as far as if you came up with an idea. So please, as you're deciding this, please take in consideration without cutting the instructors in certain areas that is real crucial, that please be open-minded with us, and we appreciate it if you just work with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have 2 boys.
Could you please introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm Sally Klausmeyer. I'm trying not to be emotional, but I have 2 boys. They're very involved in music. Boy Scouts, for example, there's a Boy Scout who just walked in here. They're involved, and it's due to the fact they have the opportunity to be involved in this awesome music program. My sons are also very artistic, and I'd hate to see that quality stop. I would really like to see they excel. You just don't know how much they excel. My son, Adam, has had the opportunity to go to a jamboree through Boy Scouts. But they're involved in Boy Scouts and they're involved in music because they've learned so much from both. Both of those things work together. So I would love to see that there would be an opportunity for them to continue. Adam and Ethan are both in full court press. They're both in, one is an HMS singer, another one is in HNS honor choir. They're both in orchestra. They are both very engraved in the music program. And I would love that they wouldn't have to make a decision. So please keep the quality of the music program. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we'll close the audience participation portion of the meeting and move on to report of committees.
We do not have any committee reports at this time.
Next item on the agenda is communications from other organizations.
The only thing I have is Facilities Needs Committee sent something out today, and we were scheduled to have a meeting on the 29th, April 29th. That is going to be postponed. We will get some more information at a later date and see if we can get that rescheduled sometime. So that was the only communication that I've had.
Next item on the agenda is report of superintendent.
I do want to report on the Kansas State Science and Engineering Fair that was held in Wichita on April 4th and 5th. We had several kids participate and win honors. Jill Pokorny is a senior at HHS. She was a gold medalist in consumer science and also received an honorable mention award in that. Ethan Schmidt, a freshman, won a bronze medal for social behavior science. Cassandra Quinby and Peyton Markley, also freshmen, won a bronze medal for physical science, or physics and physical science. Jeannie Balzer and Anna Goodlett are also freshmen. They received a bronze medal in chemistry. Sarah Eichmann and Clara Lee, also freshmen, received a bronze medal in zoology. They did a tremendous job of representing Hayes High and Hayes in general at the State Science and Engineering Fair. We did have a award winner for the Midwest Energy Grant. That was Tasha Lang at Wilson Elementary. The Hayes high school student council's having a blood drive on the 24th. You can sign up online, or they will take welcomes on that, or walk-ins are welcome to on that day. The Kansas Teacher of the Year building tours took place last week, and we had Denise Danielson and Misty Norris host a group of teachers, 2 from Dodge City, 1 from Garden City, 1 from Colby, and the teacher from Liberal that's also one of the Kansas Teacher of the Year candidates couldn't make it because of the weather. Who would have thought it at that time, but they couldn't make it. But they had a good day touring all the buildings, and I appreciate Denise and Misty, the effort they put in, and 2 of our outstanding teachers that are representing us well as they go out to other communities. And that is all I have.
Any questions for the superintendent? Next item on the agenda is the financial report.
Well, I wanted to give everybody a quick update on this year. I know we're going to be talking about next year here shortly, but I first wanted to thank the staff in their tremendous efforts to reduce expenses this year. As we reported, we're going to have about $80,000 less in our budget this year based on our audited enrollment. And we are able to make up that money through the amount that our staff has saved. So I'm really excited about that. We should be able to finish the year with within our contingency reserve and the transfer to special ed. And so any additional money that we continue to save will help us next year by being able to maybe carry that over in the contingency reserve. So again, thank you everybody for all your efforts this year. Appreciate it. As I talked about last week, if you want to pull up that one, the state funding, we were looking at the state aid for people, sorry. You know, in this illustration, which I know the media has shared, it's also on our website if anybody would like to view it in detail. But our funding from 2008-2009 to the current year is actually $1.3 million less than what we received back then. And also our weighted students, which includes not just only our head count, but our bilingual, at-risk, vocational, virtual students. That number has gone up by 215. So if we were to have received the same funding in 08-09, that funding as we, in today's, with our current FTE, we would have received $2.58 million more this year. So just a graphical description, illustration of those numbers. And then of our general and supplemental general budget, 86.5 of that is in salaries. So another graph just showing that how much of our budget in general and supplemental general is salaries. So I know there's been some questions about that. And then the last one that is new to the board tonight, I just wanted to show a little bit of a comparison to other districts, showing where our salaries come from. For example, in this one, we are 3.3% higher in our salaries in our overall budget. That is the entire budget, including all different funds, by 3.3%. Ellis, Victoria, we're anywhere from 22 to 13% higher. And then below that, it's just another illustration of how much we pay for teachers versus classified personnel and administrators. So I know there's been some questions about getting something a little bit more visual, so I was just trying to help out in that regard and show those kind of information. Are there any questions on any of that?
Tracy, on the graph with the 86.5%, you had figured up some numbers there about what the actual dollar amount is on those. Would you share those?
Sure. The salaries and benefits, the 86.5% represents a little over $20 million. The supplies, 6.29%, is almost $1.5 million. Our utilities at 3% is $709,000. Equipment and maintenance is 1.87%, and it's about $435,000. Transportation operation is 1.2%, and it's about $280,000. And then services and support, which consists consists of our curriculum development, consulting, legal fees, our audit. That's 1.1% of our general and supplemental general budget for $257,000.
Thank you.
You want to pull this one up, Shannon, unless there's more questions for her. I'll go over that. What is being projected now, we had talked about this a little bit quite a bit during the work session. This came out over the weekend from the Kansas State Department of Ed, and the numbers have changed since our first discussion about this. If you look at column 8, and you may not be able to see it there, but proposed additional local option budget classroom fund, where they are funding the local option budget at a higher dollar amount than what they had in the past. The first spreadsheet that came out showed us receiving about $57,000 more in that, based on that. As you see now, it's $7,000 less that we will receive in the local option budget based on not being able to count virtual students in that. There's some at-risk weightings that aren't included in that. I'm questioning, and I'll find out this information, but I'm questioning on the amount that they're reducing that. We had FTE of 44 virtual students that needs to come out, but what the figure they have is a total of 88, and I don't know where all of those come from. So all of the information that we're talking about, local option budget going to 31%, all of those things, the figures are a little bit different. I will be making those calls tomorrow to Topeka and see what we can find out. But that piece was different, and then the proposed additional max at 100%, if we did go to 31, 159,000, I think our figures show that should be a little bit higher as well. And then the property tax relief at $166,000, and that's up about 60,000 or over 60,000. That was what was on the previous list. So the mill levy would go down based on that. But just a quick overview of that, because it did change what we have on the next sheet. Just a quick overview here of the budget increases and how we came up with the $1.3 million increase every year. You budget for utility cost increase. The two big items that add up to a great deal, obviously, are the special ed transfer, and the next one that has fiscal year 14 special ed delayed transfer. That's $550,000 in special ed assessments that we will end up paying next year. The trend has been, since 1997, the district's general fund and supplemental general funds haven't balanced at the end of the school year. So they've had to defer payment from this fiscal year into the next using the special ed co-op funds. You would just make that payment, the scheduled transfer, later. And Mark can attest to this, but he used to have over $1 million in his special ed reserves. And like the co-op includes Ellis, Victoria, La Crosse, and Hayes. And all of those districts pay an assessment as we do into that, and it's I say separate money and special ed money. The assessments have gone down the last several years that Hayes and all the rest of the schools have paid, burning that reserve. And in the past, Hayes has always been able to make that transfer late, because in the special ed budget, Mark always had enough money left to make the payments, or all of his payments, so he wouldn't be in the red at the end of his fiscal year. We're to the point now that all of those reserves are basically burned up. We can do that one more year, and that's it. If we don't increase the assessment, and our portion is estimated at $300,000, along with all of the other schools that are in the co-op, all of those fees have to go up. That's where a big portion of what we're saying we're short next year comes from, because there's no way at the end of next year we have to have a balanced budget. There's no place to borrow, and I say borrow, that's a loose term, I guess. It's just a matter of transfers, but those are two big items. Health insurance increase, we budgeted 10%. I think that's pretty common, and that was a $236,000 increase. We don't know, obviously, if it's, what the increase will be, whether it's 10, 15, 0, whatever it's going to be. But 10's an estimate that I think has been used quite often. Workers' compensation, we've talked about this at several meetings. Our premium went up $100,000 for this year in workers' comp alone. Next year, we have to budget for that, plus whatever additional increase we'll see in that premium, which was estimated at $16,000 more. Again, it's an estimate. We have to budget for that. The 403B plan that was started wasn't budgeted for in this fiscal year. That's $142,000. Again, these are all estimates. We have to budget for that. Salaries, raises, under budgeted, $195,000, almost $200,000. A big portion of that comes from in the budget. The calculation was a 1% increase, and a 1.85 increase was actually given, so it wasn't budgeted. So all of that is under budgeted by the 0.85%. So as we started the year, we noticed right away that all of the salary line items were in the red, and that's one of the things we found out. Miscellaneous other budgeted items, $89,000, and there's a list of those, but and then estimated cost of restructuring, that I believe was in this, or I guess the curriculum director position and some of the other positions like that. Under the reduction piece then, budget reductions, consulting fees, that was $65,000. Staff reductions, which many of you have spoke on here, we're talking about 19.9 FTE through attrition, resignations, or non-renewals. That's $973,000. And the graph that Stacy just talked about, looking at how and where we can make up this big deficit, and it comes down to basically salaries and benefits are the big ticket items that we have left. Cuts have been made for several years to almost every other area. Supplies are very low. If you look at the graph, all of those things, there's not a whole lot left to cut. This does include classified staff. There'll be some other classified positions, I'm sure, that more than likely won't be filled. At the end of the year, we always have resignations and restructure for next year. What we have tonight are non-tenured and tenured certified staff to meet the deadline that the state has when we have to notify staff, is why these things are here and some of the others aren't yet, because we have more time for those. Extended days and extra duty days are on the list as well. Reorganizing English language learner program, we're anticipating a $70,000 savings there. Reduction in athletics, $11,750. It has two fee increases here, one for workbook and material fees. That isn't going to be anything that the board approves tonight. Same way as transportation. We'll talk a little bit about the cost of transportation. But what we will need to do in the next several meetings is make decisions on whether we're going to charge a fee or make cuts in those programs to make up the difference in the dollars that we anticipate there. Some of the other things is 4-day summer work week, paying the secretaries at a nutritional service fund rather than general fund, reduction in licensing and software. I know we're looking at every program that we have software-wise with computers, and feel confident that we can cut the $55,200 at least, and possibly more depending on what direction we want to go with some other things. But and then the Project Adventures restructuring that, but it comes up to the 1.4 million. If you look at the very bottom then, and this is what's changed a little bit, cumulative increase of state aid, the $22,000, that comes from the increase in base state aid per pupil, minus what other cuts they've done with at-risk, non-proficient at-risk, and some of those things. The increase in the local option budget, the last time I went over this, that was a positive number of, I don't know, 60,000 or somewhere in there. And now it's a negative. That's the things that we'll be checking on to see where we are. Like I said, the way I have it figured, the state on the spreadsheet they sent out, and they're all estimates, show that we would lose twice the FTE that I thought we should. And then loss of new facilities waiting. I know our legislators are working on that as we speak, and when they get back to session, they will look at that and see if they can change the language where a few districts, Hayes included, Salina, there's several others that didn't pass a bond issue to get new facilities waiting or anticipated it, just did it out of capital outlay, and the way the language is, we would be short, or we would not get that because of, it says specifically those districts that passed a bond election and sold bonds, which we didn't. Out of other cuts, FTE, I mean, we're looking at several positions at the high school, and these aren't, every position isn't a one teacher. I mean, there's point this, point that, but we're looking at social studies, business, math, science, English/foreign language, PE, and library. The middle school, English language arts, math, library will share with the high school. Elementary, we will reduce 2 fifth grade sections, 1 fourth grade section, and 1 third grade section. For a total of 4, we're looking at reducing a librarian in the elementary school. And then under the district cuts, we have the music, art, ESOL, and counseling for, I believe it's like 18 total out of all of those things. So that's generally, or that's pretty much where we are. When we get a little bit farther, I can elaborate a little bit more, but that's kind of where we are budget-wise. Questions, comments, or?
What would the unilateral pay cut percentage be to make up for the 973,000?
I think we figured about 8.5%.
8.5?
Does that include all employees?
I believe that included certified and administration.
Any questions or comments?
Any further discussion? Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, which includes the board meeting minutes from the March 31, 2014 meeting, the work session minutes from the April 14, 2014 meeting, the financial reports, which includes the clerk's report, expenditure summary report, building budget reports, and investment report, the authorization of the Clayton Holdings to make payment to Paul Wurtenberger in the amount of $117,553.50, and, Connections Program Self-Assessment, Ongoing Monitoring and Planning for 2013-14, and personnel transactions, as well as approval of bills in the amount of $2,822,273.66.
I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved by Board Member Patterson, seconded by Board Member Liker. Is there any discussion on the consent agenda? Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is the Board of Education candidates, which is the interview process and the selection of a replacement to fill Darren Shoemaker's spot. We had previously pulled names out of a hat, and I advised the candidates earlier where they stand in that. Paul Adams will be first. What we would do is ask the candidates if they could please step out. We're going to take about 5 to 10 minutes with each one of you, and we'll bring the next one in when it's their turn. Ready?
Okay, well, first off, let me introduce myself. My name's Paul Adams, and I'm a citizen of Hayes and employed at Fort Hays State University. I've been a physics professor there, also an education professor. My official title is Anschutz Professor of Education and Director of a Science Mathematics Education Institute. I have to be upfront and say that my wife is an employee of the school district. She's Hayes High School. She's the science department chair and the physics teacher out there. And that we've had 4 children, that 2 of them have completed, and we're hoping to see them graduate in May from Fort Hays, and 2 others are at the middle school. And echoing what we've heard earlier is that they've been active in, through all 4 of my kids, either in music or academics or athletics, depending on which child we talk about and which year we do. In terms of my background, a little bit about that. I've been a citizen of Hayes, I guess most recently from 1996 on, although I was here from 86 to 89 when I first came here from Ohio via Washington to Kansas and took a position at the university for 3 years, and then I went away to complete my education and work at another institution for a while, and Morris Whitten asked me to come back. And my wife, being from Kansas, who didn't like trees, said, I want to go back to Kansas. And I said, well, all right, we want to keep the marriage going, so we'll come back here. And I have to say now, since 1996 to now, that I've almost lived here longer than I've lived any place else in my life. And so I consider Hayes to be my home, and I've taken on, been active in the community through Boy Scouts for quite a while now, and also doing a lot through my positions at the university to deal with informal education, particularly in the science education arena, that I feel is important, because though we rely on the public schools to give everybody the basics, there's a lot that special interest of what that children want that we need to provide, and I've taken an active role in that, my civic responsibility. And I guess as a citizen, I felt like that since I have made Hayes my home, I had an opportunity a couple times to leave Hayes and go on to bigger institutions across the country, but I decided this is where I want to be. And I feel that at that time, it's at kind of my time of life, that maybe it's time to step up and take a civic responsibility. I preach it to the scouts I've worked with, I tell my own kids, and I felt as a citizen it's my time to do that. In terms of what I can bring to this position, I should say that through the university I've had to deal with personnel issues with our tenure and promotion process, which oftentimes it's a hard process to say to somebody, you're not going to continue. You aren't meeting what we need to go on. It may be there. I've also been involved in job searches, looking through, seeing what people are important. Been president of the Faculty Senate and had to get the exposure of how the politics work at the higher level for not just the Board of Regents to the institution, but some other things as well. In terms of other opportunities to be involved in the community or the state, I've been on several KSDE committees. Most recently, I'm a program reviewer for teacher education programs, so I have a great deal of experience in that area. But also, I've been involved most recently in one of the co-chairs for the Next Generation Science Standards, or the Kansas College and Career Ready Standards, call them by their proper name, and also was the co-author that actually pushed through the proposal to get those adopted. So if you don't like them, okay, I'm sorry. I thought they were important to the state and important to our community because they promote those skills that we need for our students to be able to do. And I think Hayes has done a great job of that, looking at my own kids and seeing the students that I see that come from Hayes to the university. But I want to keep that going, and I think that's part of what I bring with it. In terms of any other leadership opportunities, I am on the Kansas Star-based board, on their foundation board, and have had to look at some of the things that are coming up there with federal funding and how that's affected that institution in particular, and also involved at the national level in the Council for National Science Teachers Associations. So as part of this, through my involvement, is I understand, and looking at your budget here tonight, and then also hearing the parents that have talked about, is that I understand there's some tough decisions to be made. And none of them are going to be popular, no matter how they're decided. But I feel that I have some background, skills, if you want, to work with groups, try to bring individual perspectives together, and welcome the opportunities and challenges, because that's part of what I do, is I like to get involved, particularly if there's something challenging to be facing. And at this point, I'll open to your questions.
Are we just going to go down the table, or?
If you have a question, just go ahead and ask, I think. Just-
Okay.
Say my question you kind of already spoke about, but you can further elaborate if you need more time. But I just wanted to know what your experience and background in working with a border committee to help kids is.
I'm sorry, I have to say it.
What is your experience and background in working with a border committee to help kids? And I know you kind of touched that already, but if you want to take the time to further elaborate, you can.
Yeah, and I think border committee, I guess I'm not.
A board or committee.
Oh, border committee, okay, sorry, I have a little
Sorry, I
hard
probably
hearing.
spoke a little fast.
Okay, well, yeah, it's one of those things about being a citizen for a while, you kind of lose that. But in terms of my working with kids, I've been a Boy Scout leader for quite a long time with that, and 86, I was involved with several troops in town, and I've been involved recently with Troop 101 and Troop 133. I've kind of drifted around to where I'm needed. And in terms of helping that particular program work, I have served in various leadership roles within the way the Boy Scouts are organized as a district, where there are volunteers who volunteer their time to help provide and identify programs to either grow the program, deal with fundraising, or even helping design programs. And I have served, although not recently I'm a unit commissioner, which means I work with individual scout units. And also I was district committee chair, which is kind of the top volunteer position in a district, in trying to work and develop those programs. That's in my volunteer side. And the professional side, one of the things that I put together when I took the position that I currently have at the university, I had to make a choice of leaving here to run a science and mathematics center or staying, and I was given the opportunity, said, develop something. And so out of that process, what I've done is leverage both the position that I have, leveraged grant work, grant projects that I do, because I may manage anywhere from $1 million to $2 million in grants each year. And with federal money, I understand how budget restrictions kick in. But as part of that, with the Science Math Education Institute, we've put on each summer, we've put on youth summer STEM programs, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. For example, this summer we have a camp that's going to focus on engineering for elementary kids, getting them introduced to that because we need that workforce, we need that work skill development. We have one that's focused on middle school girls because we've got a huge loss of those individuals from the workforce, particularly in the engineering, the computational area, well, they'll be doing e-textiles, so a lot of that. I became involved in the Kansas Starbase, which is actually funded through Department of Defense, and they're not in Hayes, although we bring them to Hayes each summer to do a camp for kids here because they're centered pretty much in school districts that need some extra science opportunities. And I joined that foundation board because I believe in what they've done. I've worked with them and I've done it. Kansas State Science and Engineering Fair, at one point I was on their board, but I also oversee the local one that the students have to qualify to go on. And I also have been passed to 3 times now, president of the State Science Teachers Association, and I've been active in that because I felt like it was necessary to help build the professional development of teachers to make them the most effective they can be in the classroom. And other things that I could go, I'll stop there.
Thank you.
All right.
Well, as a former student of yours.
Yes. I've kind of noticed that along the way.
I don't know you. I don't know you well enough on a personal level to refer to you as anything else besides Dr. Adams. But you're a difficult candidate for me in general, just because I served under your tutelage for as long as I did. But the biggest question I guess I would have, and this is what I grew up in a household that was school board. It was always stated to me that before you get on some type of a committee or a board, that you have to make sure that you have a complete unbiased approach to it.
Sure.
So, with no disrespect intended here, as a professor, as somebody who's well rooted in the education process, with a wife who works in the district, I'm not doubting any of your abilities as an intelligent man in the education world. Can you separate the two out?
I had this discussion at home just recently about that very issue, because it is something that both she and I felt, and I do have to say that even though we're married, we don't always agree, and I don't want to go too far there, because I'm sure she's watching this right now. But as we talked about that, I guess the point is that I do try to separate out professional decisions that have to be based on evidence and mission. And I know that the school board has to deal with issues that no matter how you vote, half the people are going to not like it, half the people are. I mean, it's just like anything we hear from the legislature. Which half you like is the half you hear. But if you look at the whole story, there have to be tough decisions. So can I separate those two? And that's a very fair question to ask. And I can, because and I would say that's shown up in my professional life as well, is that I will hear all the sides, and at the end, I'm going to look at the data, I'm going to do the analysis, I'm going to decide what I think is right. And as I tell my own children, and I tell people I work with, sometimes I choose fights or choose things that are the right thing to do. Not the popular thing, definitely not the easy thing, but the right thing for the greater good. And so I believe that's a very important piece. Now, so that's kind of a part that the answer is part of the advice I have in my life, and I know that whatever came up with personnel issues, that would have to, exempt myself from being in any discussion with that, and I understand that would come out. And that may be a detriment, because a lot of the things we're talking about right now in budget, the only place you can cut is actually in the teacher line. Just like any budget I deal with, I have to do that same thing. In terms of my professional life, by training, I'm trained as a physicist. And I'm an educator, science educator by choice. I had to make that choice when I finally decided what my doctorate would be in. So that means that I'm rooted in decisions based, again, on evidence that I have to have. I have to have the evidence to make the best informed choice. What I do with the education world, as I said, my big part of it is that I got involved in science education because I wanted to make a difference in the life of youth. Because education for me, coming from Ohio and a public school and all the things, is that it was really important that it had a good education to achieve the things I've done in my life. And so that's why I'm in science education, because I believe I do an outstanding job of working with teachers in professional development, but that's separate from the decisions the school boards face. So I see those as two different aspects of it. But probably the greatest one would be the concern about the fact that I do have a spouse who is an employee of the district.
Thank you, Dr. Adams.
Yep, no problem.
You good? Okay. Well, I do know you very well, and your credentials in the academia world are renowned. I truly respect it. I've
thank
worked
you.
with you for a number of years, and so have many others. So I'm going to turn it to a budget question.
There you go.
Okay. So, as you know, we're definitely not looking too good right now. 1.3 million deficit for next year. State funding's been level. We've been told year after year that we have no cushion whatsoever. Our contingency reserve for the first time in 20 years? As long as you've been on the board.
Not that long.
Yeah, we did have a contingency reserve of 200,000, which we used up this year. Now, knowing that anytime you run any entity, you do need some financial cushion. Mm-hmm. It's not a popular thing to have extra money at the end of the year, but it is a necessity. What process would you go about making sure that we work to have that money's at the end of the year to get and weather storms like this?
Sure. Well, where I would start, and part of what I would look at is first look at what is our mission of the district, because at the end of the day, that's what anybody that's in this position is promised to the community. That's an implied promise that we will have that quality education that we have to have. So that's the first place. And from that, we have to begin to look at it. What is it that is not mission central? And that may mean, for example, seeing that you're going to look at transportation cuts. It's a small pie, but it's something. It's a small bit in the whole total scheme of things. The idea that you're taking with the attrition to try to at least balance, and I guess that's the first step, is we got to balance. Unpopular, but some people may have to leave. Just because it is impossible to balance the budget with what you have. The other thing, though, is maybe to begin to look at some creative ways to look at where we can do opportunity spending or opportunity cost savings. For example, I'm seeing the talk about licensing, and I know from my traveling around the state looking at different things is that a lot of people are moving towards Chromebooks. Now, whether you like them or not, whether you like your Mac or your IBM, the reality is that it's an inexpensive solution with that. Are there opportunity costs to be saved on textbooks that we could begin to first make this up and come back by looking at the open educational resources? We're fortunate that we do have a university where that's actively being explored and promoted, but yet as a school district, and I have to say in a personal view is that I still think there's a lot to be said about teaching kids how to read a textbook, but the reality is most kids are more comfortable at using the resources there. So that would mean some opportunity cost in terms of professional development of teachers, but the cost savings may come out where we could save, well, we aren't going to buy as many books. And one I haven't looked at recently, but I know a few years ago, some of the school districts I'd talked to that were working with their local energy companies and doing the energy efficiency. And how do you improve your buildings to improve the energy efficiency to save that up? There was a discussion here when we had the school looking at our options for building, is that what happens if we do close one school down? That's a lot of savings, but what can be done with that property? Sell it outright, maybe possibly, that would be a big help to the district, or do you long-term rental, or to use it that way? So there are some of those things there. Should we look at different ways of staffing? You're talking salary reductions, that's a hard thing to do, but if that's done, is there a way to maybe possibly look at flexible teaching? I mean, we have the idea of one teacher, one classroom, but is it possible that people could share a position? Some folks may prefer to do that than to not have a job or to not do things. Or maybe they want to save the cost on the family and be home part of the time. It can be done. It can work if you have position sharing. That would be a cost savings because, again, personnel is always going to be the most expensive piece. So those are some of the things I'm thinking of is get it lined up, get it down, and then start being more creative, whether it's pulling secretarial fees from nutritional services, that's kind of creative. But there may be some other opportunities within the constrictures of the law, because I do know that if we have a budget, it's from federal funds, there are only certain ways it can be spent, regardless of what people think. We just can't do that without somebody going to jail or something of that sort. Okay.
Do you have the 25 to 30 hours a month that it takes to be on this board?
That's a real question with that. And again, talking with my family with that, I think that I'm at a stage in my career that I'm shifting some things around that I can find and devote that time. I'm kind of phasing down some of my other volunteer work because I'm coming towards the end of some of those, and so I'm ready to switch on to other things. Example, going off one of the boards that I'm advisory on, that's taken time, but it's time to step aside and let somebody else come up. So it will not be an easy balance of time, but I do operate on that thing is if you want something done, ask a busy person. And I think most people will tell you I probably qualify as that individual. And I do think it can do it.
Okay, thank you.
I just had, one thing for the board real quick. We're at about 20 minutes. And we've got several other, so we might want to talk briefly before we go on. But just curious, what do you believe your primary role as a Board of Education member would be?
To me, one of the primary roles of this board, particularly at this time, is to be a responsible fiscal agent for the community, because we are dealing with taxpayer dollars. And I see right now as that being the primary mission of the board because we have a problem in that area. after that, I also believe that it's a policy-making board. I mean, you hear things coming out from the administration saying, we need this, we need that, but those ideas are great, but somebody has to look at the bigger picture and say, that's great for your school, it's great for this, but is it great for the community? Is it great for all our students? And I think that's a secondary piece. It'd be nice if we're shifted around, that's all you had to deal with, but I don't think that's where we're at right now. And so those are two things, if I had to pick two things right now, I would say that's where we're at.
Any further questions? Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Thank you.
Paul.
Chris, you're welcome to get started. I would caution you, as you may already be aware, that the last one ran long, so we're going to try and limit your answers as much as possible. But if you
Say
have
less.
information, yeah,
I'm a man of few words.
go ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity to be here this evening, and thank you for the community. I actually had a long talk today with my students at Fort Hays about this being an opportunity, or whether this is, if I'm a little crazy, to step up into a situation like this. I do look at it as an opportunity. I'm an optimist at heart. I've made a living and a life buying old houses, things that a lot of other people don't want, and jumping in and tearing things apart and turning them into new properties again. In education, I actually sat out there and told everybody I actually built this board table. So my history with 49 goes back quite a ways. I was a maintenance technician here. I've crawled the tunnels, been on the roofs, been in the classrooms, and then after the death of my son, I became a high school shop teacher in Bonner Springs, Kansas. So I had an opportunity to see what it's like to be a teacher. I can tell you it's not an easy job. I read something the other day where teaching is 90% acting and 10% preparation. And to engage students, you have to be an engaged instructor. So there's a balance there. I'm also an entrepreneur. I'm a businessman. And I know that you have to make money, you have to get money, and you know, I've heard before, well, schools should be run like a business, and I know that's somewhat true, but it's not true. So I weigh all those things back and forth, and I think that's why I want to be a part of this board, to give back to this community. For the longest time, I sat back and was one of those people who said, well, they should do this or they should do that. And I thought it was time to step up. So I'm glad to be a part of 7 who are vying for this one spot.
Do you have 25 or 30 hours a month to dedicate to this board?
No, I don't, but I'll make room. I'll make room for it because I know it's going to take that.
Okay.
I've actually been, in a crazy way, I've been kind of clearing my slate. I've renovated 50 houses now, and so I kind of would like to make this a project of mine, I guess, if that's the best way to put it.
Thank you.
Can you share with us possibly some of your budgeting experience? You talked a little bit about, some people comparing it to a business or so on and so forth. Can you elaborate maybe a little bit as far as what experience you do have when it comes to budgets and things like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Currently, I'm actually on the State Board of Appraisers and help them with budget. As a board member, I listen, take advice from, the direction the board is going to go. As a business owner, I had to make money or my businesses wouldn't survive. I can remember vividly not being able to make payroll. Talk about making payroll. I actually had to swipe my credit card on my own credit card machine when I had a business to actually gain enough cash to make my payroll. And so I kind of compare that to this situation now. You guys, there's shortfalls, and you learn to be lean. You learn to, you have to make cuts. You have to make tough decisions, and making those tough decisions to make sure you can survive and build a foundation for the future. So yeah, that's where my financial background comes.
Can we borrow your credit card? Thank you.
Good one.
I think a lot of times the statement of a school district being business and education, it gets lost in translation. This is a $53 million entity, and you have got 2 very distinct operating sides, operating institutions. You have got the curriculum which sits over top of all of the education and instruction. And then you have got every other aspect that any other large-scale business outside of manufacturing would have. So for me to hear, it is a business, it's not a business, we would not be in this situation if the business aspects would have been taken care of. Lack of oversight, lack of leadership, lack of accountability, those are leadership issues. I don't think anybody has a problem with the education that our children have been receiving. So with that being said, back to your original statement, it's not, we're faced with 20 positions, $1.3 million. In your opening statement, you acknowledge the hard work that it takes to be a teacher, which I don't think there's a person in here that would argue that one way, shape, or form. But elaborate on the business side, or not seeing it as a business, I guess, because it comes off to me in a sense that it reminds me of what got us here. So I don't mean any disrespect, but it does. That's the way I kind of read what you were saying. So coming in on the business side, what do you got for ideas, suggestions right now? What are some solutions you might have for us to look at?
That's a big question.
But a board member would take a seat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tonight.
I don't think I know.
Okay.
I know that it is a business. It has to be run like a business. There's the teacher side of me that understands the other side, the classroom side, no doubt. I know that cutting positions is tough because I know a bigger classroom is tough. I've been in smaller classrooms and you can teach. I've been in large classrooms and you just start to manage. There's a big difference in that. Sure. But I also know that at the end of the day, if you can't pay the bills, you can't pay the bills, and tough decisions have to be made. My idea is, I think the first thing I would do as a board member is this, is I would contact every principal and go to every school and spend a little bit of time there and get to know them and get to know what's going on. Because I think the best way to understand what's going on is to be in a building, to walk the halls, to talk to the principals and see what's happening. I hope that the cuts that are being made and that are going to be decided upon have been a group effort. I hope that principals have come together with a superintendent. That's where I hope it all started, was in the trenches. I think to really understand and be a good board member, for me to be a good board member, I have to be out there and see it. I don't want to just make cuts. I want to make cuts that are real, because we're affecting lives.
Thank you.
This board, I think, has made it pretty clear and apparent that we want projections 5 years out. You know, we've been operating year to year, no contingency reserve but one time, which we burned up this year. So literally we're operating on zero every year. What would you do and where would you make the cuts, knowing that state aid is not going up? And if it does, it's not enough to cover, you know, rising costs of utilities and regular inflation costs. Where would you make those cuts, and what insight would you have into making sure that at the end of every year we are balanced and actually running in the black, not the red?
Well, I think I go back to, I think as a board member, I think that one of the first things I'd have to do is I have to trust in the superintendent and the principals that are out there doing it. I know that in order to build for 5 years out, you have to have a strong foundation today. Go back to the fact that I'm an optimist. I think you can take any situation and turn it around. I don't know that I have the right ideas yet. I think I need to be on that side to really see what's going on and engage myself in it, to really begin coming up with those ideas. I think there's one thing about me, is that I'm not afraid to share ideas and be out of the box thinking. I'm an independent thinker. And I think there are solutions out there. What they are yet, I'll be perfectly honest with you. I don't think I would even pretend to say I know what they are.
What do you view if you were selected, what do you view that the board's primary objective is, or your primary role as a board member is?
I think number one, and I think you're just step back. I think we're leaders. Everybody that wants to be in this position is a leader. But I think the best leaders have good followers. And I think that's what I would portray myself as, is I'm a leader, but I would definitely take a step back. And I go back to myself going out into the schools and getting to know the principals again, and getting to walk through the buildings and just get a feel for what's out there. I would want to just be open to ideas, open to the ideas that are out there in the schools. Some of the best ideas come up through the trenches. I'm in charge of a project on campus called Red Balloon. And one of the main things we do in Red Balloon is no administrators are allowed in our meetings. And the only reason we do that is because we want innovative ideas to bubble up from the bottom. And I would be, as a board member, open to all ideas that people have to share, community included, especially community.
Any further questions? You're close to your 10 minutes.
All right.
Not too far over.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Patrick Scott. I'm a retired educator. I taught school in Victoria for 32 years. I was a teacher and a coach and administrator there. And after retirement, I was on the school board there for 2 years. And while on the school board there, I was a KASB rep. So I went through the training for new board members. I went to conventions, and just had a really good session with the people there from KSB. It's a good group to work with. So but I resigned after 2 years because that's when my wife and I moved back here to Hayes. I'm from Hayes originally, a product of the public schools, K through 12. My claim to fame is I'm a Wilson Warrior, the very first class to go from kindergarten through 6th grade there, so very proud of that fact. And then I was a Falcon and then an Indian. So after kind of being in college, I was here and there, and I finally ended back here my senior year with my elementary degree. And then I got my master's in school administration plus 30 hours here from Fort Hays too. So, and I have a wife. My wife Gia is back there. She's an insurance executive for AmeriGroup, which is one of the 3 companies that work with CanCare. 2 kids that are married. Both of them are in education. My son's a 6th grade teacher and a coach in Ness City, and my daughter's a dance team instructor at Johnson County Community College. So that's general rundown of what's been going on.
Do you have 25 or 30 hours a month to put forward?
Yes, I do. Right now, I do a lot of volunteering at the hospital. I am on 2 boards at the hospital. I'm on the volunteer board, and then I'm on the foundations board, and I'm on the finance committee of that. But those only meet quarterly. The volunteer board meets once a month. So this would be my top priority.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, you've seen the challenges we're facing right now. What would be your drive or motivation, if you will, to be on the school board right now?
You know, that's, when you think about that, you know, I taught middle school math mainly for all those years. So it's just the kids. I know that might be a corny answer, but it's just the kids. I miss being in contact with them and helping them out as any way that I can. That's why I got on the school board of Victoria, because it just made so much sense to continue being a part of the kids there and trying to help them out. But, you know, I could stand up here and spout all the qualifications I have, but it means nothing unless you actually have the love for the kids. I remember being in a coaching clinic with Coach Crubb, and he was talking about all these different techniques, and all of a sudden he would stop and he'd say, "But you got to love kids. You know, and that woke us up. And he'd go on again. He said, "And this is how you throw the jab, and this is how you do it. But you've got to love kids to make it work." I think I do. I think my kids in my class would say that I did. I think the teachers that I worked with and the other board members would say that also.
Thank you.
So we are responsible, the board up here, and assuming you get selected, you'd be responsible as well for not only spending the taxpayer money, but also making sure it's spent very wisely. And at that same token, making sure we carry over enough every year to weather a storm as we're in right now.
Correct.
Based on your background, how would you go about making sure that we are balanced every year, do have a little carryover, and can use those funds when we need to weather a storm?
All I can say about that, Mr. Liker, is just advanced planning and just looking ahead, not only budget for the next year, but be continually looking down the road and checking your enrollments and making sure that it fits the bill there. And yes, I know there are going to have to be cuts made, and activities might have to be part of that, but you just have to be continuously looking down the road and making sure that you're maintaining that fiscal responsibility, and that is how you build community trust. When you're transparent and people can see that you have things out in order, that's when trust is built, and I think that's what would really help out.
I just had one question. If you're selected on the board, what do you view the primary role of as a board member? What do you believe your primary role would be as a board member?
Best quality education possible for the kids. And that, of course, stems from the teacher up at the head of the classroom. And whatever we can do to maintain the best teacher possible up there and giving them the best possible tools and things to work with, then that's going to bring us the best education for our kids. So.
Any additional questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
My name is Sarah Rankin. I grew up here, and I'm a product of the school district. I'm a product of sports and music in the school district. I grew up with a teacher. I grew up with a music teacher. And I didn't realize it then until I became a parent. But in looking back, sometimes as parents, we can become passionate parents. And with that passion, sometimes we can be irrational. And so when I look back as teachers, I think they field a lot of passionate parent calls. I think probably as the board, you field passionate parent calls. Tonight, if I weren't here seeking a spot on the board, I would be out there as a passionate parent. So in knowing what I come into this with tonight, that's part of it. I'm going to take off my passionate parent hat for a minute and give you a little bit of background. I moved away, and we lived in Kansas City and Topeka, and I had some kids, and we were involved in 6A school districts. And then my husband and I decided we wanted to get back to a smaller community. Specifically, we wanted to get back to a smaller school district. And I've had 4 kids in the school district over the last 4 years. One at the high school. And it's interesting because my husband grew up in Kansas City, grew up in a 6A school district, and his experience in that 6A school district is very different than the one I had in a 5A. A graduating class of 400 some is very different than a graduating class of 200. And when I heard about the mega school concept, I was very concerned. That is not something I would want to see as a parent. And I think that there are other people who come to Hayes seeking a smaller community and seeking a smaller school district. And so I think that's important for all of us to remember when decisions are made, is that 2 of the largest employers in this city are recruiting doctors and professors that are looking at our test scores, but are also looking at our music programs and our art programs and our sports programs, and looking at how we're functioning as a school district. Brought this so I wouldn't get off track. When I came back, I got involved in the school, and it, much like growing up with a teacher, it gave me a perspective and an appreciation for what our teachers are going through. I have an opinion, and I have a perspective having volunteered in the school office for 3 days. I have on specifically school nurses. I saw things that a school principal does in a given day or in a given couple of hours that I had no idea were on their job description. I've seen in the lunchroom and in the classroom what a couple of behavioral issues can do to detract and somewhat derail the education that's going on in that classroom. And so when I hear about class sizes going up, I think that that's going to have an even greater impact because, you know, I was in class sizes when I was witnessing that were at 22, 24. As to why I'm here, 2 weeks ago, I was on a soccer field in Wichita, and I took a phone call from a parent and a teacher. They are both. This individual was both, asking if I'd heard about the cuts. And the reason the phone call came to me was because of my involvement on the PTA. And she asked if I'd heard about the cuts, and then the reason she was calling me was to say, can the PTA, if these cuts go through, and if our class sizes grow to 28 to 30, can the PTA help fund paras in these classes? And my initial reaction was passionate parent. What has happened? And then the second part that kicked in after that subsided was ex-auditor. That's where I started my career after college, internal audit. So I'm not a numbers person. We did more internal process reviews, organizational process. We were called in when there was a problem or a challenge and they needed a perspective, a dedicated resource to look through that process and make recommendations. We also did some what are called control reviews, which were more on the finance side of it. But growing up in that environment, like I say, I grew up in that environment from a career standpoint because that was my initial job. It caused me to question things. It caused me to ask about the numbers. But so after Passionate Parent was done, ex-auditor stepped in, and my next thought was, what can I do to impact this process? Well, no, I'm sorry. Ex-auditor said, what happened? How did we get to a $1.3 million budget shortfall? And then quickly move to that point where we were making cuts. And so I started asking questions. I started making phone calls to try to understand how we got to that point. And then I suppose after I was done with auditing, I went into more of a management role. And that's when my management background kind of kicked in. And the next question I was asking is, how can I impact this process? What can I do? And I spent days talking to individuals and trying to gather information. And that was a little disheartening because it brought me through all the numbers that were shared tonight and a lot of background. So then I was going to show up here as passionate parent. And then someone suggested that perhaps my way to impact all of this was to submit my name. And that took a little thinking on my part because I've never previously aspired to this. And one of the reasons I haven't, if it ever hit my radar, it was because I didn't think I had the right background, because I thought you needed someone who had previously had teaching experience or someone who was previously in administration or had more active involvement than just my volunteer opportunities in the school. But then when I started looking at some of these problems that the school district is facing, I realized that I understand and know this very well if I look at it through my lens, which is this. We have in this district employees, we have teachers who are our front line. They're a touch point to our students who have a very important job to do to go out and educate our children. In order to do that job effectively, they need a toolkit. And in that toolkit, one of those pieces is a management. And that manager's job is to do a couple of things. One, our employees need to feel valued. If they don't, they walk into their job every day and they're disheartened. They feel dispensable. And they can't be productive and do their job, which is to educate, if they're feeling that. They need a job evaluation system so that they understand where they are. and that there's constant and good communication about where they are in their professional development. And if there's any concerns or problems, that's a great place to have that conversation. And then that information needs to be filtered back up to management, so that you can address and remove those obstacles, so again, they can perform their job effectively. None of this happens in an economic vacuum. And I hope everybody understands that when you looked at those numbers tonight. Every decision, at least in this environment, your revenue is very fixed. I don't know if you all realize that, but revenue seems a little fixed here. And there's not a lot of ways to grow it, very limited in fact. The revenue stream seems to be in a little state of flux at times, and it's changing. And so that means that you need to keep a much better eye on the cost side of the equation. And so I think it's critical and important that every decision that comes through is assessed for budget impact. A cost-benefit decision is made at every point in the process. And that those decisions are made not only current cost-benefit, but short-term, 6 months out, a year out, 5 years out, potentially 10 years out. Now, I know some of that sounds easier said than done, but that's what I learned in business. And that's what I would bring, is a focus on a process, a focus on an organization, a focus on employees. What I wanted to end with, and I'm sure there's a million things I meant to say that I didn't, but one of the other things that I learned this last week in speaking with all of you and speaking with Superintendent Cat is that all of this information is available to all of us, and I didn't understand that it was out there, and that all of you are on the right path. I believe that if I'm not finding myself in a seat up here, I hope all of you understand that I am now an educated parent. I'm a passionate parent and I'm an educated parent because of the last 2 weeks and the evolutionary process I've gone through in understanding all of the challenges that our district faces. And I heard Mr. Davidson say earlier, we want to help, we want to be a part of this process as a parent, I think as teachers, as staff, that it's not us versus them. And that goes for administrations at the school, administration up here, the board, everyone, is that this is our school community. And with good communication and a focus on the right challenges, I think we can find our way out of this. I think that's it. What do you have for me?
Well, you've put some time in the last 2 weeks to get yourself educated where we're at. So let's talk about time.
Okay.
Do you have 25 or 30 hours in your busy schedule per month to dedicate to this board?
Do you?
No.
No.
But
But
I'm doing it.
you made the time.
Yes.
And I think that's what, in the 2 days where I went through the thought process to decide to put my name, that was part of it, is can I make the time to be a part of this? And I concluded that yes, I can and I will make the time for this.
Okay.
If I find myself here.
Thank you.
I'll just ask the same question I've asked everybody else. You've definitely done your homework, which, I applaud you for that. It does take a lot of time to sit up here, and you've put your time in already. Okay, one of the things is we've got to make a lot of decisions that are not necessarily popular, but they are necessary for the sustainability of the district. One of those we've been told every year is to carry over contingency fund. We've done it 1 year. We've burned that contingency fund up. It was 200,000. We're told it's supposed to be over $1 million. What would you do and how would you get there to make sure that 5 years from now that we would have, that cushion to where we get in times like this?
Well, that is quite literally the $1 million question, isn't it?
It is.
Was it 1 million or 2 million? I thought at one point I heard it was 2 million that was supposed to be in the contingency
$2 million
fund.
on your day?
Minimum one.
Okay, so here's the reality. If you set that as a goal, your budget challenge right now is set at 3.3 million, right? So we're not looking at 2 million, you're looking at 3.3 million. Ooh, it just got worse. I'm used to cost challenges. I've dealt with them in the past. You get your heads together and you start looking for ways. I have some ideas. I know you guys have had ideas. I think there's good ideas out here, too. I worry that, do we have enough time to look at all the options, or are there things we can do to buy more time to give us more budget constraint? Look at more budget reduction options. The reserve is important, and I think we can see why it's important, because then we ended up in this. If we had that 2 million reserve, we wouldn't be in this situation, right? But had you known the numbers or the financial straits that you were in, you probably wouldn't have made a lot of the decisions that you made this year. And that's why I think it's important to understand where your budget numbers are coming from, so that every decision you can look at, can we afford it? And can we afford it in 5 years or 10 years? So do I have any great ideas? I was sitting there running numbers, and I wondered if a 10% reduction across all non-salary expenses, if I do my numbers and you're saying that the staffing was 86% or 85%?
86.
Okay, 86. I actually ran it with 85%. And if I looked at the budget sheet correctly, and just took 10% off every other expense, which I realize that may not be the answer, wouldn't work, I came up with $617,000 without touching salaries. So I don't know, could we start there? Could everybody live with a 10% reduction? I don't know. And if we could do that, and then the next year, okay, so that only gives us $617,000, I realize, of the 3.3 that we need. But then if I couple it with the other things that were up there, we're at about 800,000, and that's closer to that 973,000, which are the staff cuts that we're all so worried about. So I don't have a good answer. I'm willing to try to work through it.
I won't steal your question.
No, I'm good.
Sandy Shardy answered mine.
I just have one question. What do you view as the primary role of a Board of Education member?
I think, hopefully I alluded to that. You're the management. I mean, I think in concert with administration, you have employees out there that need direction and guidance. And we can't do that by bankrupting the organization, so that's part of it. But there's also a whole nother piece, which is to develop a culture of open communication and to reward and retain employees and to make good budget decisions. So if I had to write out a job description, it would be quite lengthy, but it would mirror very closely the role of an executive or a high-level manager in a business organization. But that's how I view the world. Come on.
No further questions?
I prepared so hard. What else do you have for me? I think you all are getting tired, and I'm only number 4.
All right.
All right, do you have some?
I got one for you.
All right, here we go. I asked for it.
Challenge.
All right. I am new to the board. This is my first term. I was a concerned parent, 3 kids in the district. Something just didn't seem right to me. It didn't. Watching everybody everywhere else that we go, everything else was changing, moving, growing. Our cosmetics, our aesthetics, I mean, things just didn't seem quite right. So I wanted to get involved, just like you know. I was under the impression that I could kind of come in, learn the system, sit back a little bit, learn from the people that are here, discuss with them. No, things started off in a way that really wasn't possible. Your situation is even worse. Ben, I mean, I felt sorry for myself for a long time. Now I feel sorry for the 7 people that are out here.
Sorry, is there a question here? Or
There is. You've got less than 2 weeks to get completely caught up, make extremely difficult situations. Our viable options are very limited. I think there are things that exist, creativity, thinking outside the box. There's some things we can do. You ready to jump in and go forward? I mean, jump in, go forward, make the decisions, and if everything goes right, would you want to continue this as a rerun in your next election, do you think?
Okay, I
Because
think
it's
there-
easy to look at a one-year term.
No, it's true.
Or filling out a little bit of a time slot, come in, what can you screw up, what can you make progress in that? But do you want to do this for another 4 years?
Okay, so is that the question? I think
Yeah,
there's a
that's-
couple questions
It's like
in
a
there.
question and a half.
You know, I wasn't sure, and maybe that's why I never aspired to this previously. And the last 2 weeks have galvanized me. I am excited to take on the challenges. I really am, because this is what I used to do. This is what managers do. We are presented with problems, and I was in an organization where it was problems every second, and you bust through. And sometimes you have a good option, and sometimes you have a good enough option, and you have to live with the good enough temporarily. So that is the background that I bring. I'm used to being presented with problems and having to very quickly generate solutions. And maybe they're not always the best solution, but sometimes you're under a time constraint. The second portion, if I make it through this year, assuming I find myself up here, will I run again? It's hard for me to say that because I don't know what a year would bring, but I would hope so. I would hope that I'm ready to put myself up to public scrutiny and go for a public vote at that point, because I hope that I've had a successful year on the board, helping make right and good decisions. Did that answer it? Okay.
Maybe your first vote could be to shorten that podium.
Or a step stool. I'm not opposed to step stools. I feel my balance is
We've
pretty
had a
good.
bunch of slip and falls already this year.
All right.
You wouldn't count under the work comp?
Yeah. You want to go towards that. Thank you.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much, sir.
All right,
your
since
timer.
I wasn't eavesdropping, I don't know how it was supposed to start.
What kind of security do we have out there?
It's pretty tight.
The white noise generator out there earlier?
Yeah. Let's start by introducing myself. My name is Jerry Brown. I grew up on the farm at Victoria and really have spent most of my life in the Hayes community after graduating from high school over there and coming to college at 40 State. Most of you, and probably most of them, know me as a former educator. I taught in this district for 15 years. It's where my passion was. I student taught here. I did my observations here. I got hired here not once but twice. And I feel a dedication to the district because they gave me so much. That's one of the reasons why I really wanted to be on the board, was my opportunity to give back to the district for all that I had been given in the time that I was an employee of the district. That lifelong dedication that I kind of had with education and learning this last fall is the first time since I entered kindergarten that I wasn't in a classroom, either as a student, as a teacher, as a trainer of other teachers in their classrooms. And to be honest, I kind of missed it. And so again, the opportunity to serve the board gave me an opportunity to touch the lives of kids and parents again through what you guys all do, and the hard job, to be honest. I really just want to do what's overall best for kids, and so that's basically why I'm here. I don't have an agenda. I said that from the start. As I talk to people, they're like, do you have an axe to grind? Do you have an agenda? And I'm like, no. And then I realized, yeah, I kind of do. My agenda is that I want to make Hayes Public Schools the best schools possible for our kids, given the problems that we face, the challenges that we have. It's not going to be easy, but it's something that I feel that is needed. So I guess that is my agenda. We are preparing the leaders of our community for the future, and it's that important of a job. Do we have challenges? Absolutely. And I guess I feel like another reason that I wanted to be on the board was somebody needed to step up in a time when I was afraid no one would. And then I sat out in the hallway with 6 people and myself, and went, when the going gets tough, people come out. And so I am proud of the candidates we have to choose from. You can't make a bad choice tonight. I feel that from the bottom of my heart. Whoever you guys choose is going to be a very qualified candidate. If appointed to this position, I want you to know what you can get from me, what I would give you. And that is my complete dedication to the job, my full effort, my full support. I'll give it my all. It's education has been a passion of my life, in my life since the beginning, and it always will be. So whether I'm at the table or supporting from the sidelines, it will always be central to my heart. So if you choose to put me on the board, it will continue to be central in my heart. And that's pretty much what I have to say.
Well, you ruined my question. I was going to ask you if you had the time, and you already said you had the time.
I've got the time. I have the time, I have the dedication. I was a teacher, so I'm not grading papers 3 hours a night and all day Sunday, so wow, since the fall I have had so much free time. I am ready. I'm ready.
Okay, thank you.
So you've done the education side very well. Are you ready for the budget side?
You know, the cuts will be hard, because cuts are always hard. I think that anytime you make cuts, it has to be a balanced approach, a balanced way to handle those kind of budget issues, because as soon as you start pitting one person against another, one program against another, everybody loses. So the need to do a balanced, in our world these days, at the state level, at the federal level, compromise is a dirty word. And if it's a dirty word, then I don't want to be a part of this board, because compromise is the only way that we'll be able to be successful at maintaining a budget in this district.
I'm going to change my question.
Okay.
You mentioned compromise. You saw the graphical analysis we had tonight. 86.5 down to 6.92, down to 1 and some change. Where do you see room to compromise?
I don't know. I have to look at the budget. I mean, I have only had a desire of sorts to really dig into the budget since the position opened. So am I an expert at what the district's budget looks like? No, and I'm not going to lie and say that I do know. It'll take studying, it'll take learning. I don't know where compromise is. I guess that's what our job is as a group, as a team.
What do you view the primary role as a Board of Education member?
As a member of a team that will have to make the hard decisions, that will have to work together. There's no room for divisiveness of sorts. Differing opinions, sure, that's healthy. But I think my primary role on the board is to be an informed decision maker and a part of the overall voice of the leadership.
You were obviously a teacher for a long time in that side. Do you, coming over to the administration side, if you will, or the management side, do you see any issues going forward as far as making some of these decisions?
For me personally?
Yes.
You know, I told a lot of my friends who are teachers, they said, we are behind you 100%. And I said, until I make a decision you don't like. And I know that we'll have to make decisions I don't like. We have to do what's best for kids. I have to leave. I mean, I definitely have a big picture idea of what goes on, because I've been involved in that side of it, and now I'll be able to be involved in this side of it, and it will open my eyes probably to things that we on the working side didn't see. So, yeah, decisions like that will be hard. They'll be hard. They'd be hard for you. So, I think if I'm appointed, those are the hard decisions that I'll have to be capable of handling.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How are you guys doing?
Good.
Number 6, hanging in there?
We're still here.
It is notably warmer in here than it is out there.
We turned the heat up. We knew we were going to have a big audience. We'd drive some of them away. That's still sticking it out.
Well, I'm Mandy Fox, if you guys aren't aware of that. Thank you, first of all, for giving me the opportunity to stand up here and introduce myself and speak with you. This is something I've wanted to do for a while. It just so happens that the position has come vacant a little bit earlier than I thought. You can ask Elizabeth. I've been hounding her, like, when is the next election? When can I? So she probably thinks this is, Mandy the crazy person. But the reason I've wanted to do it for a while is, I'm very passionate about two things, I guess, really. My children is one of them, and my career is the other. And those two things happen to coincide with this position and some other things that I'm passionate about. Two things that make a community run, in my opinion, are the school system and water. And as you guys are all aware, in the city of Hayes, we have some water limitations. Some of that is out of our control. Some of it we can, do better on, but by and large, that's something that's out of our control. The school district and the school system is something that is in our control, and I feel like I can do a part to help with that. I have 4 kids. 2 of them are in the school district. They go to O'Laughlin. I have a 2nd grader and a kindergartner. I have 2 younger ones, a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. My husband and I moved back to Hayes in the summer of 2012. And at that point, we were living in Ulysses, and my oldest son was in the school district there. So I grew up in Hayes. I'm a product of this school system. I'm an alumni of this school system. I think great things about it. But we've also been out and experienced different things. We lived in Manhattan. We lived in Greeley, Colorado. We lived in Ulysses. So I've got to experience a couple different things. And I did note very different things in Ulysses from here. And I noticed when we decided to move up here, the school system is something that we critically evaluated before making the decision to return home and be closer to family. If we didn't have a good school system, we wouldn't have moved back here. And that's something that's really important, and I think that I can play a role in helping that school system stay strong. We need that school system to attract professionals, to get those professionals to stay here and raise their kids, and also to make the community grow and develop. They're all kind of linked together, in my opinion. Something that you won't see on my resume is that I'm not a quiet person. I tend to challenge, and I won't accept the answer of this is how we've always done it. I'd like to know why. How can we make it better? How can we do things differently? How can we improve? I also am not someone who, if I express, discontent or frustration, it's not because I just want to complain. It's because I want to be part of the solution. I want to be part of trying to make it better. I want to be part of making it stronger. There's a lot of things I can equate public service like the school board to, and one of the best analogies I have is running. I'm a big runner. I recently ran my first full marathon. And there's a lot of things that I think are similar. When you sign up for a marathon, as if you volunteer for the school board to sign up for school board, people say things like, "Are you crazy? Why would you do that?" You step up to a start line, and there's anxiety, and there's doubt, and there's frustration. And as you're going through there, you have bumps and bruises, and people come down on you, and you want to quit, and you want to give up. But at the end of a marathon, as it is with the school board and reaching goals, there's a sense of accomplishment, there's a sense of good. You feel better at the end than when you started. People ask me if I'd run another marathon. I most certainly will. I'll run one in October if I can. And that's the same thing I would say if I don't get elected tonight. Will I run again? Absolutely. I'm up for the challenge. One of the things that I also wanted to add to this is, the school board, I think, takes a lot of heat. I think that they get a lot of bad press, or just the bad press gets out there, not necessarily the good things. And I can honestly tell you, I don't know what the goals of this school district are right now. I don't know where you guys hope to be a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. But I would like that message to be conveyed more publicly. What are we going to do a year from now? How are we going to get there? What steps will we take, and how will we accomplish that? And I think that's more what the public needs to know and see versus some of the frustration and struggles that we hit along the way. Not that those shouldn't be public knowledge, but we got to put a plan out there that is workable, and how do we get there too. So that's my spiel. I won't take up more of your time. I'll answer your questions.
Well, I've got one that I've asked everybody, but back to the crazy part about running
Sure.
for school. There is good news there because the state is now giving us a 25% discount at Larned.
Oh.
have to go. So we're good
People
there.
have told me I need to check in there several times, not just for this reason, so good deal.
Okay, so back to the time issue. You're a
Sure.
busy mother, your professional life, marathon runner.
Absolutely.
Do you have the 25 to 30 hours a month it takes to
You
be
know,
on this board?
if you were to look at my calendar and say, there's no way she has time, but it's just like with running or training or anything my kids get involved in, you figure out how to make that work, and you figure out how to schedule that. And yes, we have a very hectic life, but there is always somebody that's busier than me. And this is an important part of community service and something I think my kids need to see me doing as well. I think giving back to your community is a very important thing, and so that's part of me being a mother too, is showing and representing how you do that. So.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any experience in working with a board or committee?
Yeah, when I was in Ulysses, I was on the Economic Development Board, which is kind of a weird situation to be on economic development in Ulysses. But I was on that board. I was also on the Extension Board down there. I was on quite a few boards there. As my kids have gotten more involved in different things, I have tried to focus my involvement and my efforts on things that kind of surround them and impact them as well. I'm involved with the PTA, I'm involved with 4-H. I try to do things, I used to be on the Kansas State Alumni Board, but those are things that took me away from my family, and I didn't necessarily feel an immediate, or I couldn't feel an impact for everyone that is close to me, and so that's why I've kind of refocused my efforts there.
Thank you.
When I was running for school board, I had a number of people ask me this, and you kind of touched on it a little bit. With having your kids in the district, they're obviously a priority to you.
Sure.
Do you feel you'll be able to separate the personal aspect of that when it comes time to make the tough decisions that could affect the buildings that they're in, or?
Yeah, I think it makes me passionate because I have a vested interest in because of my children being here. But I also think that I work with, I'm an environmental consultant, and I have to work with producers, and being an environmental consultant is not the profit and making of their business. Anything they put into the environmental concerns is, not going to make them money, and usually they're not happy when they see me anyway. And so I'm constantly having to do more with less, and I think that's a theme that is encompassed, not only in that business, but also in the school districts. And so I understand that. And so, yes, there's going to be things that are going to get cut. And maybe that's something that my kids are really involved in, or maybe that's something that's going to get modified than my kids. But I think if it's for the greater good of the school district and it makes us more efficient and a stronger district, then I can separate those two.
This board, current board, I guess, has made it pretty clear that, we want to see the numbers, we want to see the budget, we want projections. We've got graphs now.
Yes,
as
I
you
see
saw.
those.
But we're also future planners. We
Yes.
want a 5-year plan. Unfortunately, we're not to that point yet. We're facing a $1.3 million deficit. Our internal auditors have said, or not internal, but external auditors have said that we need to also carry over a contingency reserve. And we've used that up this year. If it
Mhm.
wouldn't have been for that, that's $200,000. That's another 4 to 5 positions
Mhm.
that we'd have to let go.
Mhm.
So do you have any magic in your toolkit to where we can cut a budget and also start not only balance a budget, but then work 5 years out to have a reserve, enough of a cushion, enough capital to weather some of those storms? Do you have any ideas?
I don't have a magic toolkit. I'm always joking with my clients, too, that I don't have a magic wand, or it's been broken or in the shop for quite a while now. But I do think that overall, as I said, you have to do more with less, and that's a theme that's been trending for quite a while now. It's not only in water conservation, in budgets, it's just the way thing is with technology now. You always are trying to figure out how to make yourself more efficient, more streamlined, and do more or the same level with less resources. And I think this board has done a very good job of trying to answer the questions for the current situation and has goals to do that. And it's just maybe something that these minds are all going to have to put together and work really hard and diligently at. I don't have the magic answer for that. But I know that's a strong question, and I'm not afraid to be part of helping find the solution for that. So.
I'll ask my same question as well. What do you view as the primary role of a Board of Education member?
I think that the primary role is to set some goals, set goals, set a plan, set the steps to get to that goal, achieve that goal, but also be a liaison between what's going on in the schools, in the school district, out to the public. I don't think that those communication channels are always very clear, and those resources aren't always available to get those communication channels open. But I do think that because schools are such an important part of a community, that your guys' job is the face of the Board of Education and to convey that to the public on what the needs are to make that school district strong. Is that it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I tried to organize my thoughts a little bit so I don't run over. I typically have a tendency to talk too much, so if we get too far, you guys can just let me know. Big hand signals or something. My name is Luca Borni. I clearly have no problem speaking, and part of that is because of my forensics and debate background. That's one of the programs that I guess meant the most to me. One of the things I'll mention here later too is that's because of my father. I've lived in Hayes for the past 17 years, although I actually grew up in La Crosse. So I kind of know, the rural background, a small community. I did go to Fort Hays State University. I have a bachelor's of arts degree in communication. My career choices, if you look at the resume, are kind of, I don't want to say all over the board, but it looks like what led him here to there. And really, it was the matter that I wanted to stay in Hayes. Growing up in La Crosse, a small town, it's all about man, I want to go to Denver, and I want to go to Kansas City, and I want to experience all these things. And then by the time you finish college, you're typically married and there's a child on the way, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. This is about as big as I want to be, and I love Hayes and I love the community. I am currently employed at Next Tech, where I have been for the past 7 years. The other thing I've done that's been, I guess, relevant or important for this evening would be I managed Vanderbilt's for about 5 years in a management position as the store manager. We can cover some of that a little bit later too, but budget, you had to make ends meet, you had to make some tough decisions. And I still have to do that a lot of times at Next Tech, where I got to make some tough decisions. So a little bit about me. I'm honest, hardworking, self-motivated. I try to remain organized. More fun fact, I'm a very big kid, which I think goes to my advantage. It gives me a different perspective on life. One of the things I enjoy a lot is I go to O'Laughlin every Tuesday and have lunch with my little brother. And you just get to see things through different eyes. I will tell you those chairs are a lot smaller now that I'm a little bigger, but and elbows are elbows to elbows. But you're just having lunch and you're listening to the kids, listening to their conversations, and you're walking down the hall and recess. It's an enlightening experience. And if nothing else, I just challenge all of you to try it sometime because it's fun. Reasons I'd like to be on the school board. Well, the perks, right? You can lose friends, have the public hate you, increase your stress level, all for great pay. How can you not? Seriously, I struggled with this one. Logic would say, are you kidding me? Run far, run fast, run away. But I guess on my 4 points here that I really would like to be is to make a difference. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy and everything else, but at the end of the day, that's probably what got me off of the sofa and said, okay, I'm going to get involved, and that's actually my third point was, to get involved. I know there's a lot of tough choices to be made ahead. If you look at Facebook or Hayes Post or anything, let's face it, with media this day and age, we can all post our opinion, and everyone has one, some good, some bad, some is fact, some is way out in cloud nine. But, at the end of the day, there are two types of people. Those that are just gonna say their opinion and do nothing, and those are gonna say, wow, this looks really tough. This looks really hard. This isn't gonna be fun, but I'm gonna roll up my sleeves and let's just get started. Because it's not gonna get any easier tomorrow. It's not gonna get any easier next year. It's something that needs to be done. So, one of the things I did notice, I do like social media just like anyone else. One of the things I did notice on Hayes Post is it was a comment actually, and it just said a guest user, so I can't really give anyone the proper recognition I guess I deserve, and I am cutting from the middle for what's real important there, but one of the things they said was, and then we all need to be aware of what's going on in our schools and our government, and make sure we have people representing us that will stand up for us and our children and do what is right. So, while I struggled all week to try and figure out why I wanted to do this, I was like, that really kind of sums up my feelings. I want to do what is right. I'm tired of being one of those that says, well, I wish we would have thought of this, or I wish we would have done that. I want to get involved, and obviously this would be a way to do that. So let's look at the next thing, why I'd be a good candidate. Well, number one, my son does attend Hayes Middle School, so I have the parent perspective. I have a vested interest. I've already told you I'm a member of the community, you know, and my son is part of this district, so it means a lot to me to make sure it succeeds. You know, I am a big kid, and I enjoy working with children. I do teach religion classes on Wednesday evenings. I mentioned I do the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. I do the lunch program, and then I also do the community-based program where we spend time together and do other things. So if any of you are wanting to make any donations, Big Brothers Big Sisters, you can come see me afterward. I'll gladly accept anything, and we can even bill it to you. But it's really, Big Brothers Big Sisters means a lot to me. That was one of those things that I was hesitant to get involved in, and the rewards are tremendous when you do. Other things that would be good, I've learned many attributes from my previous work experience. You know, I understand things like following a budget, and you know, I understand the concept of tightening the belt and making cutbacks. You know, I've had to let people go. It's one thing to make a decision to let people go. It's another to look them in the face and tell them, hey, guess what? You know, we're not going to need you anymore. Unfortunately, I've had to do it a lot, so I know what that means. But on the flip side of that as well, I also understand the value of people and what they bring to the organizational machine. And ultimately, you know, I mean, you take the people out of this and none of this works. You know, I mean, it is the main engine, the gears that make everything actually thrive. I do have a little bit of education background as far as my parents were both teachers. My father actually still teaches in Hoisington. And I guess another reason I'd be a good candidate is I'm not afraid to ask questions, and I'm not afraid to look stupid. So, and I do it quite often, so it really doesn't bother me. But you know, I'm not going to lie. I'm looking at this budget and a lot of these terms, and I'm some of it I get, some of it I'm going, I got no idea. But you know what? I'm just going to ask questions, because that's how you know. So I guess to sum up, you know, I've looked at all the other resumes. You know, I mean, I definitely don't have the highest educator background. My resume may not look as impressive as some of the others, but I do have a lot of heart. I do have a lot of drive. I think most importantly, I have a very strong desire to be here, and I have a willingness to do what's right. And that's kind of why I'm asking for your nomination and your vote to be on this board. And with that, I open up for questions.
Do you have 25 or 30 hours a month to put towards this board?
Do I have it? That's a funny question. I think the way to look at that is, you know, Big Brothers Big Sisters.
Mm-hmm.
That's a time constraint. It's a matter of you make time for what is important to you. And so if I sit there and say, oh yeah, I can always give that, I guarantee you once or twice I'm going to have some scheduling conflict or something else. But yes, before I decided to make this decision, I realized what the time restraint that I'm giving, you know, and that huge benefit I'm getting from it, all those perks. So.
Okay. Thank you. You've got a little bit of a business background or so, and you understand any entity has to have, basically, you've got to balance your budget at the end of the year, but you've also got to have capital to carry over to the next year for unforeseen circumstances.
Sure.
What's your experience with that? Can you go a little more into detail, and then how maybe you would use those characteristics to help us out? Because we've been told every year by the auditor that we should be having $1 million carryover, and we've never done that. We haven't even come close.
Sure. That's a tough one. This is where maybe I don't get maybe I don't look as good because I ask a lot of questions. I guess one of the first things I'd like to do if I was on the board is I really want to look at the budget. And I mean, I think Greg hit it home at the work session last time. One of the things you mentioned was looking at every building, you know, and looking at every elective. And I get the budget and we look at it, but before I make a decision, I really want to know the facts. You know, I really want to know this is what this costs us. This is what this costs us, you know, and just really see what can be cut and what can't, you know. The other thing that I guess I'd like to see, you know, the board turn to or something in the future, I have a lot of questions right now with our legislation and what's going on at the state level. You look at that slide for, you know, the weighted students and how much money we're getting. And last year I looked, you know, my taxes didn't go down. I'm still paying, in fact, everything's going up. And, you know, any Kansas legislator to me should look at, well, expenses go up. Gas goes up. Utilities go up. All these expenses go up. And as a district, you mentioned, I mean, at the end of the day, we don't want to look at, we're a business entity. You know what I mean? all those expenses are going to go up. Now, how in the world can that existing spreadsheet, where we either maintain the same or we go down from what we were 5 years ago, I don't understand how that possibly works. And I'd like to push a lot more with the legislation as to how does this work? Why do you think this is a good idea? We can make the decision today that budget's bad, we got to get back on budget. So we cut 19 FTE positions, okay? That would really stink. I'm not really 100% for that, but if it's got to be done, it's got to be done. What scares me and terrifies me more is the look of the future outcome. In 5 years, are we going to be doing this again and cutting another 10 positions? And what is that going to do for our school and our class sizes? The current model scares me, and the question I have for legislation is are we giving up on the public schools? Because that's the only thing I look at and see. Now, what can be done about that? Well, again, I have no problem looking stupid, no problem asking questions, and that's all really I have. I'm not a politician, but maybe this is something home and school, maybe this is something we can get more parent involvement in, and we can start looking at how many signatures, how many people standing up does it take to get this turned around? That money is going in, there has to be something that can be done with that. And that's really one of the giant budget type things that I want to push for. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, and maybe we're just not squeaking hard enough.
What do you see as the primary role of a Board of Education member?
Well, obviously they have to approve everything that's going on as far as by the administration, but I think a lot of it is a leadership type role as well. Whether you want to or not, you're leaders in the community, With that comes a lot of great things and a lot of bad things. I'm sure you can look at your email or your phone calls and you'd say, yeah, Luke, you're right on that one. But ultimately, I think it'd be leadership for this organization, leadership for the future, and then making sure that the choices made and the approvals made or denials made are what's in the best interest of the greater good. Ultimately, the mission statement and everything else is about children, and I think I've pointed out tonight, I enjoy working with children, that's important to me, but at the end of the day, the decisions are going to have to be based off of what is the greater good for the most kids. It's not a matter of we can probably keep everything just the way it is and everything's going to be perfect. I think there are going to have to be some choices of, okay, this many kids may have to suffer. We just have to make sure that we minimize that as much as possible.
We've asked some kind of ridiculously hypothetical questions tonight to some, and I apologize for what they had to go through.
I don't mind. You can do that with them, just not with me.
Just not with me.
Okay.
I don't expect anybody to stand up there and presume that they have all of the answers without having all of the information. There's still information that we don't even have gathered yet. You talked about communication. I think communication at times from one level to the next has struggled. Do you think that you have any, you listed it as a strength. Well, one of your driving forces is your strength in communication. Do you think you would bring ideas to the school board on how we can more effectively communicate with all those we need to get the message out to? And what type of a message do you think we need to convey?
It's a really good question. You're right with I don't really have a set answer for communication or what that would work, what exactly we should convey and what exactly we should go with. I think the biggest thing would be I ask questions, and I think that's really what it's going to be the guide of, where we need to go. Ask questions, we'll ask questions, then we get the answer, okay, then it's going to lead us this way, it's going to lead us that way. You mentioned I don't really know all these things, I have some ideas. I will sit there, I'll ask questions. It may be the stupidest thing that anyone's ever heard of. And I have no problem with, yeah, that would never work, Luke, this is why. Okay, But if you don't ask, you don't know, And I guess communication-wise, that would be the driving factor I would look at, is it's really going to have to be ever-changing and ever-fluent. That is our world, and that is the stuff that's always going on. We have to just adapt to what's going on and listen for those changes. So I don't have a direct answer. If we did this would take care of it. But I do think through questions, I think the answers would present themselves, and we'd kind of know which direction to go. Anything else?
Thank you very much, Luke. To item 9A, which is the Board of Education candidates. And at this time, I would open it up for nominations nominations to fill the open seat.
Actually, can I say something before we start nominating?
Sure.
Okay. I'm not stealing Josh's thunder here. First off, I want to thank all 7 of you. Paul, back there as well. Chris, over there as well. We need I guess, first motion to podium shorter, right? But you all definitely have a passion, and you care. And you have a drive that made you put your name in, because, let's face it, it's not the ideal situation to be in, to get the emails, the phone calls. We don't get paid for this at all. But you got talent. And when I look out there, I see a whole room full of talent. And, this may not be the ideal time that we lost Darren. I mean, that was a lot of years of experience that we had there. But what it did is it showed me that this community cares about its schools. And, I got to be honest, when I looked at this and Darren's position opened up, I thought, who the heck would want to run? I don't know. I thought maybe 1, 2 people. But 7. So that shows you that the community does care, and we've got an entire room full of people back there too. And you all have wonderful ideas. My question, I don't think anybody could have answered that. That was kind of a open-ended question. But it shows me that you cared and you thought about it. And, I'd make a suggestion to you that no matter what happens, we can only select 1 of you. We can. But it looks like we definitely got some competition for the next round. And I like that, because that's where new ideas are born. And this goes for anybody, too, out in the crowd. We're always looking for new ideas. The ideas that come up to the school board, that's, Greg didn't pop up with all these ideas, or Lance didn't pop up with all these ideas. Like Chris said, they bubble up from the bottom to the top. And so, if anybody does have the solutions for us that we need to be looking into, submit those ideas. Let us know, because we have gotten more emails in this past week than I know I have the entire year about the school district from the public. And it took some time. It did take the 25, 30 hours, and we probably did that in 2 weeks. But we tried to reply back to all of those and give you the correct information that you want. And so don't ever shy away from, the information you want. But I just wanted to thank you 7 for, getting up here. That, it was warm in here, so it definitely made you sweat. But I do thank all of you.
So it still is
Yeah, it
warm in
still
here.
is warm.
Still is. Anybody else have any comments, or?
No, can't follow that. So the way I understand this now is we nominate.
Yeah, I think the way to handle it is to make nominations until nominations cease, and then at that point in time, we'll vote on those individuals that were nominated. I would tell you guys have the benefit of only having to campaign for a few hours, and but you also have the detriment of getting to be publicly voted in or out. So.
Can we just have one easy night?
No.
Ever? Well, this
last one Monday was easy, or 2 Mondays ago, I guess.
Yeah. This is difficult in itself. I'm pretty sure that several of you have been on the ticket during last election. I would not be sitting up here. Great group. Great group.
Absolutely.
It's nice representative of a nice sample of our community. We get bogged down in all that's going on right now, and we lose sight of how great we really can be if we can come together, if we can believe in a better good. Yeah, it's encouraging. But I'm not going to make the first nomination.
I think we let Marty do that.
Paul Adams.
I think, you can either, I don't know that we have to have everybody nominate somebody, but if you want to, you can.
Did we do it?
Yeah.
Okay, I would nominate Sarah Rankin.
Anyone else?
I would also nominate Sarah Rankin.
I would also nominate Sarah Rankin.
Josh, you have a nominate, I mean, you do or don't have to nominate, you can.
I would also nominate Dr. Adams.
And I would have nominated one of those two. I would point out that I think all the candidates were phenomenal. 5 of you would have made it really difficult to pick tonight, and I do think and would encourage all of you to run. Well, a year from, or in January, I guess, is the filing deadline, and I really think that it'll be an interesting election next year. One thing, if anything, that's come out of this school board over the last several years is had a lot more people put their name in, and we don't have uncontested elections anymore, and so I think that's definitely good for the community. If there's no other nominations, I'll close nominations and ask for any discussion, if there is any.
Is the discussion, it's open to both of the nominees at this point? Yes. We've got Sarah Rankin and Dr. Adams?
Correct.
Well, those, I had those tied at the top of my list. Now, of course, Adam just kind of snuck in here at the very end at the deadline, so didn't have a chance to speak with him at all. Sarah, I'm going to start with her, and this is free speak, right?
Yeah.
We can just kind of what's going on in our mind, we can kind of bring it out loud. I think with the auditing side, I think she brings a skill set that we need at this juncture. She seemed level-headed, seemed genuine. Dr. Adams, for me, is difficult because, well, I mean, background, intelligence, look up to him. That's a difficult one for me to call, but the one that comes back is wife as a teacher in the district, and to me that's a negative. Not a negative in the sense that, I mean, she's taught my son, she's done a wonderful job. I don't know how those two balance. So either I don't have enough experience in general to see that as a positive, but to me it's one area that sticks out to me that's hard. I can't put it into a category, I guess is what I should say. That one makes it difficult for me. So with all things being equal for both of them, for different reasons, but for the same reasons, I have a problem sorting that, and that might be my own problem. I'm not saying that he can't separate out the two. I'm having a difficult time. So that's where my train of thought is.
I echo some of the concerns that Josh has as well. It's obviously something to consider. The other thing I wanted to point out too is there were several of you that actually did take the time to reach out to us. A couple of you I did not get a chance to actually get back and work with, but those of you that I did get to talk to, I appreciate the fact that you guys reached out to us and tried to pick our brain, met with us and went over things. It was great to be able to talk to everybody beforehand and kind of get to know everybody as well. So.
I mean, I would just echo with the top two there. I can't see Paul very well, but I know he's back there. I mean, you bring an inordinate amount of talent in the academic area. You do. I mean, the position you've had and what you've excelled with, and I've worked with you in the past on stuff. I look at that and I look at our school district, and our school district by no means, we don't have a deficiency in education anywhere. Our music is top notch. Our athletics are there. Our arts are tremendous. People come to this community for a reason, and it's our school district. But just with the current times we're in, I look at what Sarah's background is, And, that's what really kind of hones me in. Right there is the capability, the experience to look over very large budgets and help sift through. And, we're trying to get somewhere where we can tell the public what we're looking at. And, if you could provide that to the public, to put it in a format that we could easily read and see where we're going to be at in 5 years from now, I would definitely welcome that.
In about 2 weeks.
Yeah, in about 2 weeks' time.
Marty, did you have anything?
No, that covers it.
Yeah, I think everybody's kind of spelled out where we're at, and I think for the way I look at it, my candidate, or the candidate that I am going to support is Sarah Rankin, and I just think her background in the auditing and the budgeting, she does have, one of the issues or areas we need to do a better job of is communicating with parents and teachers and the staff, and I think she does bring the perspective of a parent. She has some background as a mother that's a teacher, or was a teacher in this district, and I just think, I think you would do a heck of a job too, but I just think for today, it's just, we're talking small degrees of separation, so. And I think that goes for a lot of people out there. So. Any further discussion? I think what we'll do then is we'll vote on the two of them, and we'll take them in the order that they were nominated, on one vote. And so all those in favor of Paul Adams, please say aye.
Aye.
All those in favor of Sarah Rankin, please say aye.
Aye.
Sarah Rankin is approved by a vote of 5-1. Again, thank you, everyone that applied,
Yes,
and I
thank
would
you.
encourage all of you to submit your names for the school board. I guess I would announce at this time that per legal advice with Bill Jeter, that she can assume her seat, her oath is here to sign, but she can't participate in any votes tonight based on that oath does not become effective until it's filed with the county clerk. So. Welcome to the board.
Did we have to sit her by me since I'm the only one that didn't vote for her?
Start winning you over, sir.
Moving on to the next item on the agenda is the district wellness update. Superintendent Cap.
Yes, we have Jessica Calhoun to do a presentation. Turn it over to you, Jessica.
You could just keep this a little bit under the length of the last presentation.
I'll be
We'd
brief,
doing
I
all right,
promise.
so.
Like you said, I'm just going to give a short update on our wellness and nutrition here in the district, some changes for next year. The Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act that was in effect 2010 has required USDA to establish standards for all food sold in schools. So you'll be seeing changes next year in the a la carte, the vending machines, and fundraising. It starts effective July 1st of this year. And it applies for all, these standards apply for all for food sold on school campus during school hours, and that's defined as anywhere that's accessible to students from midnight before to 30 minutes after the official school day ends. The standards, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. You might have gotten a flyer on that. If you want more detail, I'll be glad to give it to you. But basically, it has to be a whole grain food, fruit or vegetable, protein or dairy. And then if it meets one of those criteria, it has to meet limitations for calories, sodium, fat, and sugar, which makes it very complicated for us. My staff and I have been working very hard to come up with recipes and find products that we can sell a la carte next year to replace the items that we are not going to be able to based on the new rules, with the goal of minimizing the negative effect, both financially and student satisfaction, that would be expected with these types of changes. There's also new standards for beverages allowed, different sizes and types of beverages for the different age groups. We've talked to the vending companies and we're working on all of that. So fundraisers are also going to be affected by these rules. If it's a food that's sold during school that meets the standards, then it's okay. If it does not meet the standards, it can only be sold outside of school, on weekends, or off campus at different fundraising events. The state is establishing a limit on exempt fundraisers, and as of right, the last I heard, it was one exempt fundraiser per organization per semester. That's not official yet. We'll keep the principals posted when that becomes official. We have already talked to the principals about it, so they're aware of these changes that are coming down. And then another one that's going to affect us is no fundraiser, food or beverage can be sold in competition with the school breakfast and lunch programs. So anything before school, or any fundraisers that happen before school, unfortunately, for the organization, are not going to be able to happen anymore. Whoops. As far as record keeping goes, I, in my office, will keep track of everything that we sell a la carte at the high school and middle school, to show the auditors that it meets the standards, and then it's up to the actual schools to show any vending products or fundraisers that may or may not
Jessica,
meet the
can I interrupt
standards.
you on that?
Sure.
The previous slide where it says sponsors, who does that all include? Is that you, or is that?
Yeah, that's us.
Okay, so it's the school district. It's not like the sponsors of the food drives?
Right, sorry, it's the school district.
Okay.
That's how the federal nutrition program refers to the school district as a sponsor.
Can I ask you a question?
Mhm.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So does this affect concessions for games?
If it's during the school day, technically it does, but that could be an exempt. Most of the athletic events are after school in the evenings or whatever. If it's like an all-day track meet or something, that can be an exempt fundraiser for the 7th grade. I mean, assuming the state goes through with their rules on exemptions. Monitoring and compliance. When we get audited, the auditor will be asking for these, or what I'm told they're going to be asking for these records. And if we do not keep them, the corrective action will be put in place. Kind of switching gears here. There's been a big push for wellness policies and procedures being in place within our, with the state. And we have always had a wellness policy, that has existed. But in a committee that, in the past, they've had a committee, but it's been inactive for a while now. And Shanna Dinkle and I attended a workshop for KSD and decided to take the responsibility on that we have to, it's the law, to review the policy and update as required. This is just what the policy states right now. There's this one, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail. That meets the standards required for school districts now, and we aren't looking to change that. I think it kind of sums it up well. Because we're basically starting from scratch, we got these steps from the state website that to re-adopt a wellness policy, and it's basically, we recruited a committee, and we had our first meeting, and we began assessing where we are in regards to the 3 areas that the wellness policy addresses, and where we are compared to the model guidelines for districts. And these are the members of the wellness committee that we have developed, and it's basically the heads of all the different areas included, and then a representation of the group of principals. The model guidelines are basically a set of, I don't know, it's like 13 pages of broken out into nutrition education and physical activity. It's practices that are supposed to go with or meet the wellness policy that we have in place. And so the next meeting in May, each May we have to update or go through our model guidelines and update where we are, whether we're basic, advanced, exemplary, and then make goals for the following year, which are submitted to the state each summer. So we're going to do that next month. And as our committee grows, we'll continue to meet about once a semester to evaluate where we are and then update our practices to meet the guidelines that are required. So, and that's all I have.
All right, so the question was started already, and I was just gonna wait till you got done here. This would change, and I'm a little confused on it. So we brought up the concession stand. If we have wrestling tournament going on, if we have anything, therefore we cannot sell a bag of Skittles, for instance, from the concession stand during those hours? Is that the way it's?
If it's
you understand it?
during the school day and accessible to students, but like I said, it could be, I mean, there's going to be exemptions for fundraisers. Most concession stands are a fundraiser of some kind, I think. Maybe I'm wrong in that, but, you know, so the 7th grade could be raising money, so it wouldn't count. I don't think it'll affect the concession stands too much. I mean, if it does, I'm more than willing to help out, find some things that you have to, you know, that you can sell. And like I said, we're working with various vendors and everything, trying to find things that the kids like that meet the requirements, which are pretty difficult.
Few and far between.
Yeah. So there's going to be some changes next year, but we're doing the best we can to keep what we have.
I mean, realistically, they won't cross over very frequently. I just think you can end up having multiple groups pitted against each other, trying to sell or not sell, or I guess how do we find out? When will we find out whether we're exempt from that or how that works?
This is the interim rule, but it goes in effect July 1st. So sometime before July 1st, we're supposed to get the official ruling of what the state of Kansas decides we can do.
Okay.
From what I understand is that they're being more lenient than strict for what they're doing.
That's more of a budgetary question. I think I know the answer to this, but are you guys completely self-funded?
Yes.
So there's no, other than the federal funds and the lunch ticket prices, everything's self-funded, is that correct?
Correct. So, which is kind of rare. Most food service funds have to be supplemented with general, and we've been self-funded for a while based on our efficiency, I guess. So.
Okay, I've got a question off of Greg's, and then I got a couple other ones. This will probably, well, the snacks will probably go up in cost, I'm sure, right? In the vending
Well,
machine?
they're going down in size, so
Okay.
we'll have to play with that and see
Okay.
how that works out.
But,
But there's potential for that, yes.
Yeah, just for updates, I guess, or even current situation, where are we at in your department with the drought? I mean, the cost of beef's basically doubled in the last
Yeah.
year.
Our cost of beef has gone up $1 a pound since August, and any of you who have eaten in our lunchrooms know we use a lot of beef.
Mhm.
Just because that's a good product for us, and yeah, it's hurting us. And produce is going up, and milk has gone up, 3 cents a carton almost, which we go through a lot of milk, as you can imagine. So this is, I was telling Dean and Tracy, our expenses are going up just as much as everybody else's. So we're making cuts in our department as well to try and keep us in the black.
Okay.
In the good.
And then the model guidelines, you have nutrition education, physical activity. Are we going to try to do all that in-house, or are we going to try working with externalities that specialize in those areas, like Fort Hays or the hospital or?
Right. At this point, we're just kind of seeing how those things are already incorporated into our, the daily routine of the kids. and how much nutrition education they're really getting. I know some places are getting more than others. Some grades are getting reaching out to, I mean, there's grants, the Power Panther grants. That's an excellent, that we're going to try to encourage, kindergarten, first grade teachers to do next year, because it's free money to give these kids an excellent, dose of education they need. And so yes, we can reach out. Right now, we're trying to cover our bases, make sure we're all new at this, so we're trying to see where we are and then move forward from there. So.
I understand you're waiting for clarification, it sounds like, on some of these things, but knowing, some of the potential concerns we have, concessions being one of them, and if we think through it, it's Hayes City Shootout, it's the wrestling tournament, and track meets. I mean, so could we put that on your question list? Could you go in and start asking that?
Yeah, and I've asked the people at the state, and as have many schools, and every question that we ask them, they are asking USDA, and so it takes like forever to get back with us. So that's definitely on there. We're not the only school district with that concern. So as soon as I find out some information, I'll let the principals know, and I can reach out to you as well.
And you say it takes effect July 1?
Yes.
So we've got plans for both ways?
Hmm?
We got plans for both ways, if it goes through, if it doesn't? Or I
Well,
guess we just got to plan one way, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the standards are going through regardless, effective July 1. They've already asked, school districts have asked for extensions to submit this, and I think since we've known it was coming for years, nobody's getting granted any extensions, like it starts July 1, period.
And there may be less concern with concessions because they said one exemption per semester for activities. So typically we have one track meet home, so that could be an exemption. One wrestling match, and sometimes that's even on a Saturday. So you can do it as long as it's 30 minutes after the school ends, or until midnight until 30 minutes after. So weekends after school will be fine. Or maybe what you touched on is if we limit it not to students who are at school, really kind of keep that area free of those students so that they can't be purchasing it. I think, and it sounds like the legislators are willing to work on that whole section.
Well, and that rule's done at the state level, and from what I understand from my state consultant is that the Kansas people are being a lot more lenient than I think the USDA had originally. I mean, all these other, the nutrition standards for the a la carte and vending and all that kind of stuff is done at the national level, but this exemption for fundraisers is at the state. So they tell me they're being lenient, and as soon as I find something out, I'll let you know.
And I just want to thank Jessica. She's done a great job working with us even in our financial crisis, looking at food service, helping to pay for those salaries. And I know we have a high participation of students who participate in our food program, higher than average, and as we went to that conference. And that's because of the quality of food and our staff. And they've been working endlessly to try to keep that quality up so that students continue to purchase and to stay healthy. So I just wanted to thank her for all of her work. And it's not easy right now. Thank you.
Yeah, and I would just add, if anybody hadn't eaten the school lunch out there in the audience, go eat one. It's pretty good.
Well,
I got a tab at Wilson.
Question I got for you.
I'll be there tomorrow.
Well, no, you can't use my tab.
Oh, you should get a tab.
The new lunch program, wasn't received very well by students. Everything from lessened calories to, I don't have anything to prove this, but from a few employees, it was told that there was quite a bit of additional waste. Has everything seemed to balance out? Are we?
I think the kids are adapting well. I think they adapted well here better than they did at other places. You see all the the YouTube videos boycotting and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, I've only been here, this is my first year, so that all happened before I came, but I think they did a good job of doing healthier foods like all the time. And then I don't know, when they made the changes, it wasn't as drastic of a change because they hadn't been using extra salt or extra, butter or whatever in cooking their foods. And like she said, our cooks are excellent. They use recipes from home that are made, altered to fit the guidelines, and you can make the healthy food good. I mean, I think, like I said, the staff does a good job of that. So the kids have, I'm kind of worried about this a la carte stuff at the high school. That's going to be a big change for them. But we're going to make it work, so.
Do you see negatives? Because you've got some concerns, but do you see negatives moving forward here?
I see both sides. I think it's good that that they make guidelines, nutritional, because a lot of times the kids don't get healthy food outside of school. It's the only fruit they eat all day is, at lunch. But I do see a financial or a potential for decreased revenue, which is concerning. Like I said, we're going to try our very hardest to find things that'll still make us that revenue. But the a la carte is where most of our extra revenue comes from. We get reimbursed for the meals, but then it's the cookies and the frozen yogurt and the nachos and stuff like that cost us not that much, and we get an actual profit to kind of make up for the other stuff. So, but we're going to make the best of it.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thanks, Jessica.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the transportation fees.
I will also go over this very quickly. This is a new document in your handouts. It figures 6 different options for busing, and I think we'll discuss this in a lot more detail at the next work session, but I wanted to get the information in front of you. We looked at last year's budget and broke it out between activity and route, and then coming up with the cost of the mileage per route or per mile, the cost per mile. We used, salaries and vehicle insurance, fuel, and we came up with $5.92 per mile based on last year's figures. So you'll see that $5.92 consistently through these comparisons. That does not include administrative costs, such as, building maintenance and administrative salaries, things like that. Depending upon the option chosen, some of those administrative costs would go down, but I just wanted to show you a fair comparison, option by option. So, we'd have to figure that individually based on that decision. So, I'll let you guys look over that and we'll discuss it further at the work session.
Is, only other thing, Tracy,
Yes, go ahead, please.
is equipment depreciation figured in?
Cheryl, with equipment depreciation, would that be capital outlay? Or where does that come out of? Okay. No, sorry, Josh.
I know you weren't, I'm sorry, Josh, go ahead. if you had
No,
something.
I didn't know if that was general fund or capital outlay for the price of the equipment.
And we know that we will, that you guys want us to get on a plan so that we can be, looking at what we do in purchasing and everything. But this was really just based on salaries, insurance, not items such as buses or vehicles that would be taken out of capital outlay.
I just had a couple of questions, just so I can clarify. Number one is what we're currently doing, is that correct?
Correct.
And then the number two would be still busing all rural, but no city. Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
And then the number three would be all rural, no city, but just going door to door versus having drop-off points.
Right.
And paying mileage.
Right, picking up everybody rurally.
And then number four, I don't know what the difference between that and three is.
3 is not running the city route, only picking up from house to house.
Oh, okay.
And 4 is picking up house to house, not paying that mileage, but also running the city route.
Okay, so I had 3 and 4, or I had 4 is 3. And then number 5 would be similar to what Great Bend and Victoria do, where we would have no bus routes, and we would just pay the parents the mileage reimbursement.
Correct.
And that would just be only those required by statute.
Those would be outside the city limits, Greg?
But they, well, right, but outside the city and outside the
Outside
2.5 miles.
yeah.
It wouldn't be all rural students, correct?
There would be a few that are very close proximity to some of the trailer parks and stuff that, I mean, you assume they're in town, but they're not in the city limits, so.
And then 6 would be the current structure, but paying mileage, or that would be the current with just a $150 transportation fee.
Right, it would just be if we just added that fee on top of what we're doing now.
And not wanting to debate this any further, but I just want to, just doing some quick calculations. Number 5 versus number 1 nets us quite a bit of savings, about $50 or about $70,000, or just slightly under $70,000. And that's if we do mileage reimbursement at
56 cents.
at the current, or at the maximum rate we have to. And if you look at a 40-cent reimbursement, that takes that number to 198 instead of 160. And if you did it at a 28-cent, you're at $227,000, which would put you at almost $130,000 savings. So I know we're not talking about it, but just, I mean, that's, in looking at these numbers, that I think it's definitely appealing. A couple of other questions, though. Do these numbers reflect both public and private school students transported?
That is everyone that we transport.
And just so we're clear, we have to, by statute, transport both public and private. There's no special deals that were made or anything like that.
No, it's by
And my
statute.
kids go to private school, and contrary to what's been spread out there, we didn't cut any side deals so they could get bused. This is state statute.
Yeah.
The administrative cost, when you talked about that, I mean, is Russ's salary considered an administrative cost?
If
So that's
you-
not in there.
If you figured everything, and I think depreciation, everything would be in there, correct me if I'm wrong, Stacy, but if you used $9.61, it would include everything.
But that would just stop at transportation. I mean, you could really carry it on, because you could probably try and tag some of your salary to that as well if you wanted to.
Oh, you could, but
But
we're, yeah.
You're
we're
just stopping at the transportation department?
Correct.
Okay, I just want to be
And
clear.
we would still have to have some administrative costs. I mean, we'd still have to transport special ed, and then our, I say shuttles, the things between schools and all of that stuff.
Well, you'd have
So-
field trips
So there would
and
be
athletic
some
events,
administrative costs.
sport,
but,
or extracurriculars.
But I think that was the figure, 961 is what Tracy figured out to get to what we had spent last year, which was $797,000.
$9.61?
I think that's right.
And one of the things we do, and I'm not trying to raise everybody's rates, but we do I know we loan out the bus, or we have reimbursement rates, and that was at the 2, whatever it was. Have we looked at changing that to, I mean, at least at a minimum, the $5 rate, but it probably ought to go up to the $9 rate or close to it? You know, one of those we do in the summer is with the Hayes Rec, with that pool shuttle. I think we're still doing that. Is that right, Russ? And I
We
think, is
do.
that reimbursed at that rate as well?
Well, I don't know what you get reimbursed for that one, but working with the rec, we trade off a lot of services, and that's one of them, but,
And I'm not just trying to pick on that
No,
one.
I
I
know.
just, as we look at this, I just want to make sure we're not missing any of those other things that, we ought to be
Right.
charging for what we're actually paying.
correct.
And none of these figures do include extracurriculars or anything like that, or sporting events or anything like that?
The budgets broke out, activity lines and then route lines. So, yeah, the sports and activities are in a separate.
Gotcha.
So, I mean,
Not included.
you're looking at, if that were the case, we're 700 and some on the overall budget, is that correct?
Correct.
Last year was 797, almost 798,000.
So about 360,000 is for extracurricular activities
No.
and administration?
Oh, administration, yes, 301,000 for the administrative part, and which includes the.
I was just looking at like option one, you have 435 is the total cost now, and just the difference is 360,000. That would make up, would that?
The actual cost that, this from last year's budget that was allocated for activities, if you figure administrative costs and everything in there, it was 133,681.
And that's high school, middle school, sports, band, everything. So on that 435, then, does that include like mechanic, or is that all considered administrative?
No, the mechanic would be included in that.
Okay.
In the 435?
And you may have already answered this when you said route only, but, so kids picked up for Spark and bus to a different school, that's not included in this? It's strictly
That's-
morning pickup and afternoon pickup?
Correct. That's one of those, I say shuttles, I mean,
Okay.
that will go back and forth, that we'll have to continue to do during the day. And I believe the figure, 56,000 roughly, Russ, is what we had figured for that, doing that during the day.
What, and that's a cost we have regardless, and so
Right.
that, those numbers are just,
Right,
unless
yeah,
we,
we're-
it would do away with that.
Right.
Is it a cost? I mean, could the parents not drop at the school where they're going to have that activity that day for the full day?
Well, I mean, whether it's a field trip or any of those things, the mentoring, we run a lot of kids around to different areas for whatever reason.
Could we not?
Well, we'd have to, I don't think, I would say no, that you couldn't prevent doing that totally.
One example I know of is taking the West Side students, they don't have a cafeteria there, so we take them to a different school to eat. You know, that would be something that we would still have to do.
You had said the one figure also included the mechanics. Do we have any of, I know there's some office staff down there as well. Is that all figured into this as well? I'm sure there's at least a couple of positions down there.
What I considered administration that is not included in that, in the 592 a mile,
Right.
would be the transportation director, our dispatcher,
Okay.
and the transportation secretary.
Okay, so those other two were in, okay. And I apologize, you may have said that, I didn't
No,
hear
that's
that.
okay.
Well, yeah, I guess where I was leading to on that, and just how many then buses, I mean, we've got 12 now, if we would go down to, you know, say an option 5, how many buses do we need?
Russ, I don't know if you.
And I don't know if this, if nobody's prepared, I guess this is just one of those questions that I want to know.
We'll have, I don't know if you've done that.
I mean, on the buses, it doesn't really save us any money today, maybe some service, but they're 100 plus to replace, and they have a certain shelf life, and I think we've got several of them that are pretty close to the end of that, so that would save us at least the dollar amount of replacing those in the future. And, you know, when we look at some of our aging buses and a 15-year plan for replacement, that 15-year could be, you know, we might be able to replace them all in 5 and then have 10 years without any replacement or something.
Yeah, Russ is going to put that together on what our immediate needs are, just buses and vehicles, and.
Well, and it might turn into a 15-year replacement for everything instead of just buses, as it was before.
Right.
Because I know these
Because we have, yeah.
Suburbans and cars are
Several of them need.
pretty bad.
Yeah.
So, thanks for the information.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion on transportation fees? Item D is policy revisions on the student activity fund management, policy number BK.
This is the policy that when the auditors gave their report, they had talked about coming up with student activity guidelines and fund management things. This is it. We had looked at it earlier, and then there was a couple other tweaks, so we took it off the agenda. and it is back on for your approval.
Do we have a motion to approve the policy revision DK?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved by Board Member Patterson, seconded by Board Member Lang. Is there any discussion? I have one question. Bill, have you taken a look at this? I don't know.
On this one?
Oh, this one went to the Adams, Brown, Barron, and Ball auditor and to Bill Jeter.
Yeah. It's been a month or go or
Yeah.
more, Bill.
Well, I would propose, with Bill not having looked at it, I would make a motion to table this until the next meeting. And there's nothing on this, Dean, that would require immediate action, is there?
No, Cheryl, there isn't. No.
I would make a motion then to table it till the next work session and meeting.
I second that.
Do we have to amend the first motion?
Yeah, I think you can amend it.
I don't think so. Not on a motion to table. You can just take up the motion to
Okay.
table.
All right.
Did you second it?
Yes.
It's been moved by myself, seconded by Board Member Bickle. Is there any discussion on the motion to table? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 7-0.
6.
6-0, I'm sorry. Starting to count somebody that didn't get a vote. The next item, E, is the resolution for non-renewal of non-tenured teachers.
I had talked about budget things earlier. We've had several resignations of non-tenured staff that were approved during the first part of personnel, and then these are the non-tenured that will go through the resolution process. We have had several meetings, and a couple of the questions were asked about principals and how we came up with this. We've had a lot of meetings with entire district staff on looking at different options, and this is what we have right now. We still have resignations coming, or retirements, I'm sorry, coming in. We may have resignations come in, and this may change, but the key to the resolutions are the timelines, and there may be people on a list that would have an opportunity to come back, but we need to protect ourselves here financially and go through with this. And then as we work through the whole process, tomorrow we'll be talking a lot more in detail about transfers and who's covering where. We'll have a report from the principals on how they're going to work those things out, but that's where we are with those.
At this point, I would ask for a motion to approve the resolution for non-renewal of non-tenured teachers. I will then make a motion make a motion to approve the resolution in regard for non-renewal of non-tenured teachers. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been moved by myself, seconded by Board Member Bickle. Is there any discussion?
I'd like to
No, go ahead.
I'd like to first, number one, thank everyone who's submitted concerns, comments, everything. As James stated earlier, I've had, in my short time on the board, I've had more people here in the past several weeks reach out with emails, phone calls, stopping by the office, things like that to go through this. So I definitely want to thank everybody for at least reaching out and sharing your concerns and things like that as we move forward with these challenges ahead. As Dean alluded to, there has been lots and lots of time and effort put forward working with administration, principals, and we want to make sure that everyone here knows that none of these decisions that we have to make regarding cuts, rifts, so on and so forth, were taken lightly. It's important to know, for everyone to know, that we're trying to keep everybody's concerns at the forefront of this as we make these tough decisions. But unfortunately, no matter what decisions we make, there's no way that we can keep every person from every different group that has reached out to us, as hard as that is. We're obviously trying to make the best decisions going forward in order to help make the district the best it can be as we move forward. And we've got a long road ahead. We're getting there slowly but surely. And I ask that all of you, try to work together as a team and work with us, whether that's administrators, community members, teachers, to try to make things the best they can be. And I know it's tough in situations like this, and this is some of the decisions, as some of the other board members have said, these are not the popular decisions or the popular votes that we have to make, but unfortunately they are what they are, and we do have to make some of these decisions. So I ask that you bear with us as we move forward, and we try to make these as smooth as possible.
So, first time going through this, due to the law or the time requirements, we have to execute these as for protection of the district.
We need to meet the guidelines, which is May 16th. We need to notify, and we will do that tomorrow.
Okay. Well, I guess it's unfortunate that the district is in the situation that we are in. I know a few. I've got emails and phone calls on several. It sounds like they are great people, working very hard, and this is a blow to our school district, which they had nothing to do with any of this. And I guess as a member of the school board, I would apologize for this having to be a resolution that we're going to have to act upon.
If you vote no, you don't have to apologize.
Well, I want to be clear, so we know what we're dealing with here. I've been on the board the longest, and it's embarrassing for me to sit up here and admit that I've been part of these decisions to get us into this financial mess. And for that, I too apologize. I think we've struggled to try and get long-range planning and budgeting in place, but we've been unsuccessful over the years. But we don't have, if this were our own businesses, we could tell staff, well, you could go out and just fire somebody, or you could cut pay or do those things. We don't have that luxury. We have to negotiate those items. And so when 86.5% of your budget is from salaries, you only have so many places to take it from. These aren't final decisions in my mind. This is a resolution that's final, that we have a deadline that we have to notify by. If we don't do that, we don't have the option to do this later. I'm not saying that if we find additional money to cut somewhere else, that every one of these employees will be rehired, but I think that there are some areas that we can look at if we have that funding. I think the busing is one area where I'm going to focus a lot of my efforts, and in a number of other areas to look at where we are just doing things because that's just kind of how they've always happened. The busing is an issue that, and I don't think this is Russ's fault. He came in and inherited this situation, and but we've assumed that we had to bus these kids for years, and we haven't. And so we've spent that money we didn't need to for all those years. There's other areas that are like that in this district. If we can find those areas and make those cuts, that might be, allow us to have a couple of more elementary teachers, and maybe look at something in the music department. But I'm not making any promises that we're going to reestablish this or that, but I think what I want to see as a board member is I want to see all the areas we can cut. And the only way you can make a decision that least affects all the students is if you know all your options. And so that's where I'm at. We have to do this. We could wait until the eve of the 16th and provide notice at the last minute, but that's not doing any of the people that are getting notice a favor, and it's really just delaying the inevitable. We will not have a budget finalized and prepared by May 16th. And so we have to do these things. It's just, and I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. The school district and the union negotiated this. It's our agreement, and it's what we're following. And we have to do this to stay in compliance. So if we can find ways to minimize this impact, we'll do it. So. that's why I made the motion, and that's why I'm going to vote in favor of it.
And I'd say, I've only been on the board for 2.5 years. You know, this is not something I look forward to right away, but I understand the regulations we're under, the state financing, we're not getting the money. We were. We look back, and you can go back to 93, and we're getting the same money we were back in 93 per pupil. But we've had salary increases, we've had utility increases, we've had supply increases, and so when you look at that, we can't get to a point that we're spending more than what we're bringing in. And I had asked Tracy for those numbers, you know, the 20 million on salaries, the 1.5 million on supplies. We for certainly have to pay our utilities. We can't get around that. We've got to pay the salaries, you know, but maintenance, transportation, services, support, and supplies, I mean, those are areas we can cut. But when we look at 979,000, I mean, I just ran some rough numbers on that, and that's reducing those lines 53%. And I know there's a number of teachers out there right now that you've seen your supply lines in the last 10 years go down 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%. Your supply lines. You can't, I mean, you're depending on your own pocketbooks. You're depending on the PTAs, the home and schools, to fund paper, to fund carpet, and everything like that. And it's time that us as board members up here stand up and say, we need to get this corrected. We do. And, you know, the decision's definitely not going to be a popular one, but when we look at it, you know, I'm with Greg here. I'm really hoping with transportation, you know, we can save a lot of this and look at a lot of other areas too. So, I mean, I look at it and, you know, I'm not in favor of it, but when we look at where we're at district-wide, it's something that we got to do.
Further comments, discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Item F is the resolution for non-renewal of tenure teachers. Do we have a motion for approval of that resolution?
Make a motion to approve the resolution for non-renewal of tenured teachers.
Second that. Is there any discussion? And I think this
follows the same.
Followed the exact same logic. You know, it's not ideal, but I mean, it's, you know, we're still looking, and you know, I think a number of the candidates brought up earlier the idea that you know, a lot of the ideas are from the teachers and others in the district, and I mean, we listen to those emails. The ones that are negative and just want to point blame, they don't get much consideration, but those that have good ideas in them, you know, Joanne spoke earlier, and she's, you know, I don't know that all of her ideas are doable, but they're positive in nature. They're looking for everybody to come together and solve this. It's not us against you guys. I mean, I know we're the ones bringing the bad news, but, you know, these you know, Mark can confirm this. I'm making him do it. I brought it up at the work session too, but this isn't just the special ed transfers that this has been happening with. Early on, when I was on the board, we were self-funded through insurance, and we delayed those payments and the funding on that for a year or two to help balance the budget at those times. So, I mean, these are things that have been happening, that the writing's been on the wall for years. I think that a number of people may not have seen that or understood that. But it's been coming. I mean, we've been borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and Peter's broke now, and so we either have to borrow from somebody else, and there isn't anybody, or we have to, you know, tighten our own belt, and that's where we're at. Sue's out in the audience. Hopefully she can figure out a way over the next year to find some additional funding for us, and I'm sure she's going to do what she can in that regard. But, I mean, barring additional students, but that doesn't just solve the problem, because with new students becomes more need, and so you do have a need for new teachers and space and all those things. But really, unless we get additional funding from Topeka, it's, you know, we could be looking at several lean years coming up. And, you know, if we try and follow the auditor's advice and have that cushion, it's, you know, and we have to look towards that. I don't know if we can do all that over the next year or two, but we have to have a goal to get to that. So.
I think it's important, again, also just to make everybody aware that, obviously, like you said, we're going to continue to look at the rest of these. Up until that point, we have to make that final call. Hopefully, we can find cuts in transportation and all these other areas. And as Greg said, if there's additional ideas, send them our way. Everybody's all ears, so.
And I mean, anybody that has ideas, and, you know, Brian's come in and found some savings in technology, and, you know, any areas you guys can come up with those. Hopefully, we don't get them all before we get our incentive program in place, where we're trying to reward staff for coming up with savings, to where there might be some pay to them for that, but I don't know that we'll be able to get that plan in place soon enough that we'll have all these cuts in place, so. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. Next item on the agenda is discussion by board members and agenda requests. Anything? Anyone?
First off, for anybody in the crowd that's affiliated with music and the arts, kudos off to you for reaching out and, you know, telling us your concerns, because it's not always easy. I know I was in one of those seats too, reaching out, you know, to an elected official or anybody like that. But, I mean, we're serious when we say give us the ideas, because they don't come from us. They truly don't. And you're out there in the trenches, you're on the ground, you see what happens every day. Innovative ideas are what make this district powerful, and it's what put us at the forefront. So I hope we can continue those innovative ideas and, you know, just push forward.
Anything further? The next item on the agenda is executive session, and Dean, do you have an idea on time?
30 minutes. That'll be it.
Make a motion to retreat to executive session for a period of 30 minutes to include the board attorney, the superintendent, Mark Ottman, Shannon Dinkle, Tracy Kaiser, and Sarah Rankin.
For reason?
For attorney-client and negotiations, with that to start at, it'll take us 2 minutes to get up there, so 9:53 and end at 9:23. Or 10:23. Who seconded that? Danielle?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 6-0. We're adjourned.